Oh my goodness, it's showtime. I was just sitting here taking pictures of some goodies that Casey just sent as like a late Christmas gift. And one of them, if you can see right here, is an amazing spaceship from uh it's Morty's spaceship. So it's super cool. And Casey also sent, hang on. Casey also sent an Oscar that says Brutal Mockery in Podcasting Award 2022, Monique from RadioGunk, for the expose on Howard, Ralph, and Tony's identical haircuts. So this is from Casey. It is the most amazingly fun, stupid, silly gift I've ever received. So thank you so much for that. Super appreciate that. So I didn't start with a an opening because we're doing a show that we recorded already. I'm here just to kind of hang out for a little while we do the show and wish everybody a happy new year and hope that everybody has a wonderful 2023. So I'm gonna start the show, but if you have any questions, well, I know Casey is amazing. He really is. He's a really good guy. There's so many people that used to be on the show who are just weird and just, have these weird kind of entitlement things. And Casey's totally not one of those guys. And so, yeah. So we're gonna chat about it a little bit. I will stay down below, like in the lower portion of it. Xavier might join us. Well, Whiskers might join us just to wish everybody a happy new year. Let me just get myself. Oh, Jesus Christ. I think I just dropped. I think I just dropped Morty. Oh my goodness. No, I did. I did. All right, I took it out, but suffice it to say, this is what it is, and it's like super cute. No, we'll put it back up later. That's okay. All right, so okay, why no podcast, dude? I'm sure that's Johnny. So I asked Johnny if he want. Oh, thank you, Gretchen. Thank you. This is my unshowered look. I looked much better when I did the interview yesterday with Johnny. So yes, every show is the first show. That is indeed true. So yeah, tonight is New Year's Eve. It is Saturday, December 31st. We did not do a recap show. And as I just said to Benjamin, I'm inherently lazy. So there's no part of me that would have been able to pull a show together. However, all podcasts from last year will be fully up by tomorrow. So anybody who doesn't watch us live on YouTube will be able to watch the show there. Can you play Howard analyzing Dick Clark's New Year's Eve? I'm sure we can, just not today. So, well, not a recap of the Howard Stern show, a recap of our show, because I noticed on my podcast feed that that's pretty much what everybody's been doing. So whatever. Okay, so let's start the show, and then okay, I'm just gonna put myself like a little snurch down on the bottom there, and hopefully you guys will enjoy this show. Oh, look, there's Johnny. Hi, Johnny.
The beer was empty and our tongues were tied and running out of things to
Oh, I love
say.
that
She
song.
gave a kiss to me as I got.
Cut out. I wasn't expecting you. Honestly, I know I threw you out the StreamYard thing, but I wasn't expecting to see you. Got it confess. Oh, Johnny, are you there?
You got me? Okay. And I had two things going. I was under the Deppening, and then I logged in under Squabble Lane.
Every show is the
Uh,
first show. How is it that your show goes perfectly and seamlessly perfect? Is it because Sarah's
because
running
you
it?
change equipment more than Jeff Schick does. That's why. You're using a Commodore 64 1 minute, then you got a 2023 Apple MacBook. By the way, your
Yes.
kitchen is gorgeous. By
Which
the way,
kitchen?
chat, they showed me Monique's old kitchen she used to live at. It is so effing. I've been to a lot of apartments. and some of them. This one is the nicest one I've ever seen. It's all got modern silver and shit. It was. I was so. I
That's my
mean,
old kitchen. That's not even that's not my kitchen. That's
no, I said your old kitchen of your
yeah,
old
yeah, yeah.
place. That
That's the old kitchen.
now here's the deal. I was thinking about this when I was driving around getting snacks. You and Grace did the show from there
Yes.
originally, which we
Yes.
tend to gloss over.
Yes.
How did Grace get there? Did she walk directly east from
What
Hell's
do you
Kitchen?
Oh, no, 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 no. That apartment that I showed you, that apartment, we never podcasted out of there. I was already on the west side by the time I started podcasting.
Ah, okay, okay. It was different, but that you had another place in between the place I saw and that place.
My own place, yes, which you did not see, which I fucking loved. It was just the most ridiculously amazing apartment. It was actually a building that Marilyn Monroe used to live in. And the apartments are like a really well kept secret, and the ceilings were like 20 feet high and just ridiculous. It was perfection. Oh, look, we already have like
Gungadin goes, Grace is the Chuck Cunningham of RadioGunk. Oh my God. That's so brilliant, Gungadin.
that is
Do you
brilliant.
remember Richie's brother, Monique, in
Of
the
course
first
they do.
season? Yeah.
The tall
That's
gangly ginger
crazy.
who
That's
only
so funny.
lasted what, like a couple of episodes, I think.
We could also say Captain Janko Gungadin from Jump Street, Frederick
I
Forrest.
found out something really amazing today while I was on our site, which is that the guy who is the Idaho murderer or
Yeah,
alleged
live right by
was
it.
a Stern Reddit follower.
Oh my God.
Isn't that crazy?
Aren't
And
they always? I mean, we are in a very sociopathic community. I think we found some good people here, but you got to remember, for every one of us, there are two that are sociopaths. I'm not
there
saying
are
they're
five.
killers.
There are
Yep,
five.
there are five. There are five.
There are five.
By the way, I want
And
to.
yeah.
Am I? God, Scott Balo and Melvin, please come home. Don't make me trade in Brittany Griner to get you back from Russia. Where are they?
You know what? People come and go all the time, sweetheart. You know
It's
that.
depressing. Depressing, right? You lose them, and one day they're. Pfft, pfft.
Sometimes they just decide to come, and sometimes they just leave us. Hello there,
Hey,
Mr.
how you
Whiskers.
doing?
Hi, Xavier. Hi. Merry New Year. Do you want jerky? I have plenty. I don't know what that means, but I'm just going to let it go, Drew Show.
Xavier, can you name the song? The beer was empty and our tongues were tired and running out of things to say. She gave a kiss to me as I got out and I watched her drive away.
Great song.
Just for a moment, I was back at school.
Hi,
And
River. Thank you. Gay show. I swear to God, we're doing it. I swear to God.
as I turned to away my back home,
Do you know the
snow
song?
turned
River?
into rain. That's how he ends it. That's how he
We
ends it.
we weren't planning to be the Gangzilla here, but it just wound up being that way. And yeah, so here we are. So let's tell you a little bit about the show.
Oh, I get it,
Um,
Benjamin. You're masturbating to me singing Dan Fogelberg. I say.
you know what? Here's a little fun fact about me. I love movies and I love watching them, but I would say 9 out of 10 times I never watch a movie again. Like I don't watch anything.
What's the most you've
Consecutively.
seen multiple times?
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate
Okay.
Factory, followed very, very closely by Soylent Green, followed very closely by Step Brothers. That's pretty much
Jesus,
it.
that's a weird
I
range right
know it
there.
is. I know it is. I know it is. And if Planet of the Apes is on, I'll watch that as well.
I
But
was talking to
generally, no.
Sara about the time we're having a Depp category in the next Deppies, which is going to be a series of Depp movies that made you cry. One scene in a movie that made you cry, and I go with What's Eating Gilbert Grape when they burn the house down with the dead mom in it.
What's eating Gilbert Grape? All right, I'm seeing Xavier twice. Hey, Xavier.
Hey,
Okay, something
hello,
happened where you're on twice now. Just
hello,
so you know.
hello.
Yeah,
Oh, that's
Yeah,
weird.
there's two of you. There's two of you here. So
Okay, all right. Okay, how's that?
now you're one, and there you go.
Okay, the one,
Yeah, I
but
have
we're
to
not
tell
the
you,
same.
we were just talking about movies that we can watch like over and over and over again, and I
Twilight
don't
Zone.
No, I've never seen Caddyshack. I've never seen
Really?
That's why we've talked about your dysfunction.
Yeah, there's just certain things I
Hey,
have
somebody step on a duck.
I have no appreciation for. And
I'll go
Really?
on record, Monique, with you that I
That's
think
weird.
Godfather is massively overrated. I watched it in real time. I couldn't get through it. It was I
It's
was
okay.
60
It's a good
minutes
movie.
in. I was completely bored out of my skull. Donnie Brasco's way better. Way better mob movie. Not
Donnie
even
Brasco.
close.
But again, I only watch.
No bias.
What?
No, but no, I don't think so, X. I think I would have still that undercover angle with me is I'm such a soft touch for it. Thank you, River Atchison. I agree. Thank you, sir. Ma'am.
What do you say?
She agrees with us.
Yeah, you know what it is. I will. Oh yeah, I've seen Star Wars. I've seen Empire Strikes Back a few times. But again, it's one of those things where if I catch it, I will never seek out a movie. Oh, I will tell you.
Oh, you're too good for them? Is that it?
No. I just don't care to watch it again. I have 4 or 5 movies on DVD. They are the following. This is so weird. I have the full box set of fuck.
Get your man to the host system.
I can't believe I'm losing my mind a little bit. I had a little sake tonight.
Oh,
I'm sorry.
sorry, River.
Come on, act like you had a mind to begin with.
Who's the guy I love? Who did The Shining?
Jack Nicholson? Oh,
Oh,
Stanley
stop it.
Kubrick.
Stanley Kubrick. So I have the box set of
yes,
Stanley
this
Kubrick.
is-
I have It's a Mad World.
Oh, I love that when I was a kid. That was so funny.
Absolutely.
I love Sylvester, Monique. Remember
Oh my
Sylvester?
God,
God
absolutely.
damn
Right
it.
on.
Dude.
Movies. I can watch that over and over again. But
My dad told me that guy's name is Dick Shawn or something. He was a
Dick
comedian
Shawn,
who was like
of
really,
course.
I didn't know who he was until
This is the
World.
kind of that's the kind of movie you watch with your dad. And you know what he
Yep.
made me watch also? The Manchurian Candidate with Frank Sinatra and Angela Lansbury. And I thought that was an amazing movie as well. And I've watched that a few times.
Okay.
But other than that, not
Do
a
you
lot.
actually watch anything worth a shit? That's
No.
a question.
No. I mean, and you
Dead
can
Zone
quote
is
me
awesome.
from
Dead Zone.
a million movies, and I wouldn't even know what the hell you're talking about.
I was proud of you for watching Captain
Big
America
W, I
Civil
tell
War.
ya. What?
I was
Exorcist is
proud
an
of you for
amazing movie.
watching Captain America Civil War.
That's a
You
great
made me
movie.
watch it. You made me watch it.
That
You
is
said,
No,
a
you watched it
great
on a
movie.
plane. I don't know if I made you. I don't even think I made you watch it.
yes, because at the time you had said to me it's the greatest.
Yes.
It was the greatest Marvel movie at the
Yeah,
time.
it is. I still think
Before
that.
the Avengers movie.
It actually had a plot and character development.
It's so
You know.
good. It's every damn scene, and it's actually the best version of Black Panther that's ever been put on screen. It's better than Black Panther movies.
Yeah,
I did
agree.
not know that Dick Shawn died on stage.
Yeah, my dad told me that. Thank you, Dorian. Yes, my dad told me that too.
Is he the guy with the fez hat?
No,
Dick Shawn?
he's going, I'm coming, Mama, I'm coming.
Yeah, yeah. So he's a mama's boy, and he lives on the
Total
beach.
mama's boy.
No idea who that is.
Which is
I'm
amazing.
sure I recognize the picture.
I've
Misery is
only
fantastic.
seen Private
Urban
Parts.
Cowboy.
I've only
Fuck
seen
Urban
Private
Cowboy.
Parts twice, and it was once on videotape. I never saw it in the movies, and the second time I ever watched it was when we did our review of it. That's literally the second time I ever watched it. Oh my God, Planet of the Apes, 1968, phenomenal movie, phenomenal. Any Planet, all Planet.
You know
of the
what? The fact that Charlton Heston turned into a complete prick later on kind of fucks it up for me.
Yeah, that's just life. I don't really care.
There's a couple of movies out there like where you watch it and then later on, like for example, The Usual Suspects, brilliant fucking movie. Then turn out that the director was a fucking creeper and the
Usual
Kaiser
Suspects
Soze was a creeper.
Great movie. Oh my God,
Living Dead. You know, I just finished watching Night of the Living Dead on YouTube with full commentary. That's such a great watch. If anybody likes that movie,
yeah,
it just.
I have to tell you, I love Dawn of the Dead because
Dawn of the Dead is great too.
Zombies
Tom Savini's
at the
best.
mall. It's such a great social commentary on consumerism and shit
Yes,
like
but you know
that.
what? You almost can't compare the two movies. I mean, they're
night and day.
They're
Literally.
babies of their
They're
era.
literally night and day. Think about that for a second.
Sideways is great. Loser Club. I think it's a great subtle wine buddy movie.
Oh yeah,
with Paul
but again,
Giamatti.
that's like a one
like
of.
that.
I have to tell you, at the time I had that same car. I had a Saab convertible and
Okay.
crashed it into the tree. I was like, all right, it's over. Yes, Chad Warren. I just mentioned that when we were starting the show, that the guy who is the suspect in the Idaho murders was a member of the Howard Stern Reddit group. and commented. Yeah, he just commented like a couple of days ago while he was still in hiding. It's kind of creepy and spooky and altogether creepy.
I know. Now he's killed a couple of people allegedly, but let me talk about Brent now.
Exactly. Oh, and also he talked about Double A and a couple of other things, and he was
that makes him automatic creeper.
Yeah, exactly.
He's straight out of fucking Buffalo Bill. He looks like a young Buffalo Bill.
Well, he has dead eyes, and he was he was getting his PhD in criminology.
Well, the dude's a genius, apparently.
I don't know, but apparently everybody says he was like a little bit of a druggie and on meth and lost a lot of weight and stuff like that. Best Principal, I don't know what that movie is.
You know what's a good movie? The remake of Dawn of the Dead. I know it's a Snyder flick, but it's so well done. That ending was fucking great when they get to that island. It's such a great movie.
Monique Rodney wants to know about Project Runway.
Okay, I love Project Runway, and I knew a few people that were actually on that show, and it was
I know people that made that show. How's that?
Ew,
my friends were bullying your friends.
That can make dresses out of tinfoil, so there's that.
What the fucking do? Yeah, it's called Living in India.
People, but I don't really watch those shows. I like the fat people shows, I must confess. But I don't really watch the little people.
Yeah, River. Dawn of the Dead remake. Listen, I'm a big George Romero guy, so I was skeptical, but Snyder did a fucking really good job of doing that remake.
I don't do it. Have I seen it?
Oh, I see, River. Okay, you are a dude. You look like Iggy
Oh my
Pop
God, River's totally a dude.
The early '80s in that shot.
He's gay,
Yeah,
and he wants to do the gay show with me and David,
right?
And Zach actually wants to join that as well.
That's
so
good.
We're probably going to do that all together.
I love it. 3 great guys.
Listen,
yeah,
I love Breaking Bad as much as any hardcore Breaking, but that ending is so preposterous. I couldn't get over that machine gun in the trunk. It was just, it's almost like they ran out of time. Like, oh shit!
Okay, that might be a spoiler alert.
How's he going to kill the uncle? 5 seasons wasn't enough anyway. I think you're right. I wanted
it's a brilliant fucking show. Brilliant. I'm not thinking, but the actual ending when they killed Uncle Jesse and all his Aryan brothers is so preposterous.
Okay, spoiler alerts for anybody who hasn't watched it.
Okay, you've had 10 years to watch it.
Okay, let's swing back around to River, because I have an interesting thought about this, because as we're talking about the Idaho alleged murderer, who's only 28 years old and was on the Stern fan Reddit forum, I find it amazing that guys like River, who's 26 years old, who's very cute, by the way.
Could even care about the Stern show.
Would even care about the Stern show. And, when we do our show, I'm just super curious.
So how many people have we... Okay, the Bjork guy was a Stern fan. There's another dude that was obviously the murderer, the alleged murder that he had on.
I'm talking about today, though.
No, yeah. And I'm just counting the ways, my friend.
Yeah.
So this is at least the third well-known multi-killing person that's a Stern fan.
Benjamin, Sara, David, and I did a watch along on Nightmare on Elm Street on the Deppening Patreon. Yeah, a full watch along on it. And
that's actually pretty fucking cool, dude.
It's phenomenal. It's the scariest movie ever.
Do you know that? Is it Mark Hamill? Was it Mark Hamill originally the Freddy Krueger thing?
Freddy? I don't know.
Or no, it was Robert Englund who originally tried out for Luke Skywalker. And somehow he got recommended for a Freddy role and stuff. Because remember, up until then, Robert Englund was best known for was it V? Remember that show on CBS where the aliens lived among us?
Yes, I like that show.
And he was like the
nerdy guy.
That guy, he's really fun to listen to, and he's really, really great rock on tour storyteller who names names and doesn't give a shit.
Wait, who are we talking about right now?
Robert Englund.
I have to get some water. Sorry, just give me 1 second.
Xavier, did you watch all of the Nightmare on Elm Streets, or just I only watched the Depp one? So
I only remember the first 3.
Okay.
As far as the serial killer, you know what? I don't think we ever got closure on that one way or the other. Because I know House Football asks if it was an actor. I don't think there was ever really a button on that.
I'm gonna put it in my Christmas.
We're left to kind of draw our own conclusions. because there was someone who was arrested. Whether or not it was him, we'll never know.
What are we talking
And I
about?
think the guy died. The guy died like a long time ago.
Do you guys know the story behind Sons of Anarchy? Because Gunga Din brought it up. That Chuck Zito originally thought of that, and it got stolen by Kurt Sutter, and he brought it to
Really?
FX. Yeah, and he made a deal with him that I'll put you in the show for a season if you don't sue me.
For
Really?
Chuck
Caroline.
Zito, I'll sign off on that. Chuck Zito was on Howard telling everybody he pitched a Hell's Angels show to the various networks, and he thought it was going to get picked up, and it never did. A few years, this is how Hollywood works. And a few years later, Kurt Sutter comes out with it.
That show would have best been like a mini series, because towards like the last season, it was like they were like Superman on motorcycles. They ride up to every fucking crime, like 8 deep, really fucking making it. And we'll save you, ma'am. You know? It was just so preposterous.
Marilyn Manson in that? That was the last season. He was in prison.
You know what? I saw the whole thing. I don't remember it, but
Yeah.
I'm sure you're right.
This just goes to show everybody that we could absolutely do a show about nothing, since we have an entire 1 hour and 42-minute show to get to that has nothing to do with whatever we're blathering about right now.
What are you talking about now? I'm bailing soon.
Yeah, I know.
What are you talking about?
I know you just came to hang out. I'm sorry to everyone who is currently missing a bowl game. I know Ohio State is playing Georgia in the Peach Bowl. Georgia's going to win. I mean, what are they? 12-0, 13-0, or something like that.
They get the best recruits. Why wouldn't they?
Spoilers.
You can just load up all the great teams with all the best recruits.
Sure, that's gonna be a win.
Do you remember how creepy Howard was when he had the Sons of Anarchy guy on his show?
Who did he have?
He had him on, and he had the showrunner,
Kurt Sutter.
He was married. He's married to Katie Segal. Is that her name?
Yep.
Oh,
yes.
right.
Yeah, he's like, he just droned on about that rape scene. You know?
Yeah, it's just right. He only fixated on that. That's true.
It was really creepy. You know, that he really that's how he fixated on.
What do you think about Charlie Hunnam's authentic accent from
like legit Howard really does hate chicks, dude.
Xavier,
100% he doesn't like women.
Xavier,
what?
Look what KC bought me. It lights up. It's Rick and Morty's spaceship.
Wow.
It is.
Cool.
And when it lights up, you see the shadows of Rick and Morty like on the inside. But the USB port was too small, and I showed it at the beginning of the show, and then it fell on the floor. It might have broken. And then he also
good thing he didn't get you a fucking puppy.
And then he also gave me an Oscar. And it says it's for mockery podcasting.
That's not an FME?
It's kind of sort of like an FME.
Oh, look at that. Fancy.
It was super cool. And I have to tell you, the Rick and Morty spaceship, which I just took a picture of so that everybody could see it, kind of looks like this when it's lit up. So you can actually see the shadows of Rick.
Looks like the Ed Wood UFO Plan 9 from outer space in Mars.
It's quite delicious. All right, so we're going to start the show. So Johnny and I did this interview with this dude named Chad.
Money, before you do, I just DM'd with him. I asked him if he was privy to any of the custody battle with Ashley and Allison and Old Westbury. He said, no, I didn't know anything about it. I asked him about the Hamptons and the helicopter. He said he didn't know anything about the Hamptons. I asked him if Laura stayed in the Hamptons. He said, no, he only met Ronnie. He didn't know anything else about security. So I just got to get that out.
So I'm glad we did not actually go through that with him because he would not have known. Okay, cool. Did you see the pictures he sent us?
Yeah, it was great. Tell him what it was, Monica.
So you'll see it as we're playing the video of the show. No. He sent that kind of later after I had rendered the show. But he and a bunch
Biden.
of the interns weren't invited to the final goodbye that they did at the Hard Rock Cafe. So they just decided to like fuck around in the studios, and they all took pictures in Howard's chair and all that fun stuff.
But that was the most cringe-worthy cornball speech I've ever heard in the history of when Howard last of a dying breed. It was so effing bad.
Yeah,
God, I hate that with all my heart and soul.
horrible.
What's
So-
he saying, Robin?
So we're going to start the show, and just know that if you have any questions or you want to talk about anything, I'm just wondering where I should put us. Should I put us here? Should I put us here? Yes, I'll keep us. I'll keep us there. I'll keep us on the side over there. All right. So here's our. Well, I did a little starter for it. So here's the show. Hang on. Here we go. Oh, please let me know if you can hear this because I didn't do a test. Just let me just play a little. Tell me if you can hear it.
If you're thinking about a career in the exciting world of radio broadcasting,
Good.
Stern Show might just be the place for you.
Turn off the damn radio, you freak!
Imagine yourself working in an environment that promotes teamwork and cooperation.
Robert, shut up!
Yeah, there. I'm talking to Howard.
I don't give a crap. I'm talking to you, and I'm telling you to shut the
The Stern Show provides a nurturing atmosphere in which to observe top-notch professionals practicing their craft.
This
Did
company
you guys
will
ever see
not
this?
let me work overtime.
No, I haven't seen it.
Thank
Nope.
God, because you're useless.
You're the world's biggest wimp.
What do you mean I'm a wimp? Get out of here, you big-toothed jackass.
And the man who oversees this radio dynasty is a legend in the field. A veritable pioneer with over 25 years of broadcasting experience.
I single-handedly changed American radio. When I got into radio, all they did was play music. Beatles records and things like that. Now I'm the Beatles! I am the damn Beatles!
Howard Stern personally provides guidance and encouragement to each staff member.
Goodbye. Leave. So go home. You're fired. Okay.
And as a result, a number of former lower-level employees under his tutelage have gone on to assume positions of responsibility within the organization.
All you have to do every day is get me a sandwich.
I got you, Sam.
It was got mayonnaise all over it. I thought you promised me you would leave the show within a year. I have such a little budget to have a lummox like this working a camera. I'll pay you to leave.
So if it's a career in radio you want,
Get the camera out of here! Out of here! Now!
there's no better place to fulfill your dreams than at the Howard Stern Show.
Get out! Get out! Get out of here! Get out! Get out of here! Get out now! I want everyone out of my life! Leave me alone! Leave me alone!
Never gets old.
So Xavier, you haven't watched this, right?
No, and I'm not going to either.
I did that extra long introduction.
I'm just being honest.
today. Greetings, everybody. Welcome to a one-on-one interview that we're doing today. As you know, Howard is still on vacation until probably next week. So I want to introduce you to Chad, who you see right there. And Chad was on with Yuzi last week, was it? Or the week before last?
A couple weeks ago.
Couple of weeks ago. All right, it takes usually a little while. I just realized I never fucking sit still. Like you know what? It's part of my ADD. I realized that I can't fucking sit still.
I don't either. That's why I don't go on camera. I'm pissing in
And I
jugs.
can't like look at Chad. Chad is like normal,
Yep.
looks into the camera, fucking is just normal, and I just can't sit still. I can't stop darting my eyes like a freak.
You don't look bad at all, though. It looks fine. You look like a normal person. Just I
Wow,
don't think
yeah,
I don't think I don't think it, I really don't think it's
and
bad.
and plus there's 47 minutes of commercials at the beginning, so you got to get through
Yes.
that until you get to the actual show.
Smudgy
he
goes.
was on
Angie was
with
attractive.
Carl from who are these podcasts, and he just mentioned just kind of like a little random thing about the fact that he used to be an intern on the Stern Show and then wound up being Laura Lackner's assistant. So I found that completely amusing, and I know that Carl wanted to get into it more with you, and then you guys just went to just some inane bullshit about.
I had to move on. Had to move on.
Yeah, but no,
No.
we can't move on because this
Yeah,
is we do.
that's a throwaway to them. To us, it's red meat.
Exactly. Exactly. So that's why thank you so much, by the way, for coming on. And we wanted to talk to you about that. So tell us a little bit about how you started out at the show and what you wound up doing there.
Sure, yeah, and it's an absolute honor to be on. You know, I've listened to your show in the past, and I've always still kind of tried to stay connected to the Stern world, albeit did really not like any part of it for a long time. I mean, I still don't listen to it. I haven't listened to it since around the start of COVID. You know,
you didn't miss anything.
We can get into why I stopped listening too at some point, but it was an interesting one. I mean, I was a fan growing up. I grew up in New Jersey. So Howard had a huge stranglehold going back to obviously the NBC days, and
of course,
everybody loved Howard. You know, as growing up a teenager in the '90s, I mean, who wouldn't love what Howard was putting on, and every morning on your way to school, sometimes having to carry it over with the headphones just to listen to the the 10 o'clock hours to see what
oh my god, that 10 o'clock hour we always missed. We always missed out on that hour. Always.
That was my favorite part.
Yeah, me too. And usually, actually, you know what's funny about us being live and doing this at the same time? I'm not even really sure if the Barco Mataglia that is in the video is talking or it's
you want
actually...
me to change my avatar, Monique? So you know the difference?
No, it doesn't matter because it's the talking. It's not the actual avatar.
Okay.
I just thrown that out.
We should do a show on this show so we can have 3 Mo's on screen. It'll be like that covert report when he would always take a picture at that portrait, and then it'd be like or like an airplane. It's a picture of a picture of a picture of a picture.
That's why I put my hair up, so at least there was like a distinguishing, difference between the two.
This is like a Jean-Claude Van Damme movie. Look, there's 2 of them.
I can start punching her. It'd be cute. First part of the morning and the last part of the show were my absolute favorite parts of it. I love the news. I loved when somebody got in on the news, and that's where I got my news. I swear to God.
It carried on too, as I moved into like working in college. I would be sitting there waiting for the news to end, and sometimes it'd be after 11 o'clock if they were really on a roll, or if Gilbert was in there and they just kept going and going and going. So I loved the Stern Show, but I was also a huge Opie and Anthony fan. So when Opie and Anthony really took over the afternoons, I kind of started to deviate away from Howard, and I made my way towards O&A because, I don't know, I found them a little more relatable to the stuff they were talking about. But it was always a love for the Stern Show and Howard. And when I decided I really wanted to get into broadcasting, where else are you going to go to get your foot in the door? And
Absolutely.
I was to explore being an intern at Howard. So I'd gone to the infamous Connecticut School of Broadcasting up there in Hasbrook Heights, New Jersey. The school that I went to doesn't even exist anymore.
Really? It doesn't.
Artie Lang had it shut down.
It was incredible though. I mean, it was a good little education you had, but you went there with the intent of wanting to get a job immediately. Like you didn't go to, I stopped going to college. I couldn't handle the regular classwork. I said, I want to just get into broadcasting. So I went to CSB in Hasbrook Heights, and I got the Stern Show out of it because there was another kid that was going there that had interned there already. I forget his name. It was Mike something. He introduced me to whomever was taking the applications at K-Rock for the Stern Show interns.
Interns, yeah.
And I got an interview relatively quickly. I want to say it was like I applied in May, maybe got the call for the interview beginning of July, interviewed right away, and then started in August. It was that quick of a turnaround.
So
but it was
like
because I had an
16-week program for internship, or how did it work?
Well, so it was semester based. So, you had to basically be there from whatever your general semester would be. But the thing is I wasn't in college anymore at the time. I was out of being in college. I was post-college. Well, I took a pause on college. I was not there for credits. I was there for essentially free labor, which ironically, that article that I was sent earlier today was so like, it brought back a lot of the memories I was trying to think of while I was, preparing to come on with you. And it was beginning to make me remember a lot of stuff, but I wasn't a college credit intern. There were some, but I was like basically free labor because I wanted to get in. And my intent from the day I started was to get a job, not to be there, not to be on the show. I wanted a job.
So you like Grillo labor almost, because he worked there for forever before actually getting paid anything.
Yeah.
So
Maybe,
how long
but
did you work there?
So I took an accelerated route. So I started the internship in August, but I remember I started maybe like 2 weeks before the regular intern started because the whole show was on vacation. So they needed somebody to come in and be in like the room where the phones were ringing. And that's where you essentially learned the phones and some of the ins and outs, but there was nobody there. I mean, it was an absolute ghost town.
So I wanted to just in case you guys are wondering what he's talking about, John had linked me to a PM that he sent to Chad this morning on Twitter to discuss the SiriusXM's unpaid intern problem. So this was from 2015. Let me see how long this article is. Okay, I'm not going to read the whole thing, but basically, it basically talks about the fact that they weren't getting paid, and there was and it was just free labor, and that was a big problem not only for these types of shows. It was a problem for everybody. I mean, I worked in the garment center my entire life, and we always had free labor. We would say, yeah, we'll get you, college credit or whatever. But what if you're out of college? Like, so then you are just free labor and you're a gopher and you basically do whatever the hell we want you to. And that was the end of it. And that changed sometime after this happened. So this happened to happen at Sirius, but I think it was more rife on the regular radio stations than it was at a Sirius. Like they took care of the problem there.
Right. Yeah,
and
I was
they
at
kind of had to because they were the future. It's regular radio's going down the drain, and Sirius, in order for them to make the jump to the next 5 years, they had to take care of it.
Yeah. Well, yeah, but you know what? When people become litigious, you have no choice but to take care of it.
Oh, of course.
So okay, so you started when nobody was there. So then all of a sudden it's back to work and everybody's back from vacation and you get to meet the crew.
Yeah, and I just want to piggyback too, just on the backside of that article. You need that, you have to get some sort of experience. So I'm not going to sit here and cry and say, oh my God, I worked for free and it was terrible. Absolutely. But you needed to get a foot in the door. And back in the day, we had a little bit more of a grit to us and a determination to want to get exposure and get face time. The only thing I didn't want out of my internship is I did not want to be an on-air intern. I didn't want to be the interns that they goofed on. I wanted to actually be serious, take a job, and try to move through the ranks. Yeah. So that's what I did. So I basically, they kind of, I'm just trying to remember how it went, but I think they kind of had a group and they were like, who wants to go where? And I will say too, my intern class, rather infamous in Stern lore, Steve Brandano, in the intern class, as well as Adam Glynn, who went on to be a TMZ photographer. I think he still does some stuff for TMZ. So yeah, and Adam's a great dude. I still keep in touch with Adam every so often. But we had kind of we were the last internship for K-Rock, but it was a different kind. It was weird. It was very young guys, but then there were a couple really older people in their 30s, interning. Yes. Yeah. And I remember it was a girl from Florida. I don't remember her name, but she was older, much older. And I think she had done work in radio at some point and she was interning, but because you went to the #1 show in radio to want to get experience. So
of course, put it on your resume. Absolutely.
Exactly. So they had us together and I think they were like, well, who wants to go where? And they mentioned they needed an office intern. And I was like, well, I don't want to be on the show. I have no aspirations of wanting to write for it or do bits or anything. So I was like, I'll do the office intern. So I went from being in the little room with the phones and Look, I don't get me wrong. I love that old studio. I love the old room it was in. I still think about it sometimes because when I watch the East Show clips from the past, it takes me right back because I was there for the end of the glory days, right? Of K-Rock. And I volunteered to go to the office intern, and I worked for Anne Marie McCann. Do you remember her?
Yep,
Sure.
I do.
I worked for her before she left. So she left like 4 or 5 weeks into my internship.
Casey remembers her better.
Oh, okay. So curious. So when people would volunteer or when they would ask like who wants to do what where, were there like specific roles? Like could you specifically say like I want to be an on-air intern or I want to be somebody who you fuck with?
I don't think it was on air. It's just more like answering the phones, you know, being in the back office. I didn't want to be in that office that was right there off the side of the studio. I wanted to be behind the scenes. I wanted to be out of sight, out of mind, and just kind of working my way through the system. I figured the people who were right in front of everybody were going to be more scrutinized. So I was like, you know what? Let me go a little more cerebrally and go to the back and just do my shit on that side, which is exactly what I did because out of nowhere, Anne Marie leaves. Like she was there one day and then she put her notice and she was gone. So I went from being an office intern, working in the back office for Anne Marie, to being in the back office by myself.
Just
as
doing
intern,
everything Anne Marie did too.
like 6 weeks into to being at the show.
Wow.
But Chad, it's perfect because Anne Marie, Monique, I don't know if you remember, she was never on the air. Like every now and again, they would drag her in and she would do something kind of meekly and under protest, but she was never on the air. So this is like a perfect spot for him, what he's describing.
Yeah.
To jump in her grave, as it were.
Exactly. And I'll give you a little more context. So then what I did in the back end of the office was I was in control of all of the crap that came into the show. Now, not fan letters, not like, Dear Howard, you know, I need $500,000 because my mom's dying of cancer. None of that stuff. All the free shit that came through me.
You were swag king.
The glom box.
The glom box. They called it the glom. And what I would have to do is and this is post 9/11 and 9/11 rather fresh in 2005. So they're still following like strict 9/11 protocols.
This chat kills me, by the way.
Everything was starting to go through the scanners, right? So they're checking for anthrax and they're checking for all the chemicals that were being sent to politicians and people randomly. So you would get these boxes that were already gone through by security and whatever, I guess, mail task force they had. It would get to me. I'd have to go through it. I'd have to move over to the computer and I'd have to enter it in this database that then Howard would go through and select what he wanted.
So you would log it in and then you just he would just do a checkbox of
correct
shit for him.
Correct.
And then everything else was free to.
Everything else would be, so then like, you know, there were different, if I'm really trying to remember, this was like, they used Lotus Notes. They used such like old school. I swear.
Chad, that was almost the name of this show. Lotus Notes. I swear to God.
The Lotus Note. I'm like having flashbacks of all this crap. This is all coming back to me as I'm talking.
Oh, that's good. We love that.
The Lotus Notes in this computer. I forget what the program was called, but Howard would select it. Then it would kind of move to a next stage. Then it would move to the glom. But I have to tell you, the guy who was logging the glom was taking some of the good stuff out and putting it off to the side, which was authorized at the time because I was the logger. So I walked out of there with some pretty good shit. Absolutely. And then it would move to the glom box.
That's the way it should be. You're in charge.
Howard was nuts about his mail too. So you must have been opening all that. Like he
didn't
touch.
Did you do the mail?
No, we didn't open it. No, see, I didn't get like I said, I didn't get like letters or any kind of like fan notes. What we got was the shit that was sent to him. So sometimes you would get like an abstract piece of something that somebody wanted Howard to look at and talk about on the air. But as far as like, Dear Howard, I am your biggest fan, you know, Dear Fred, I'm your biggest fan. We didn't get any of that. We would get the boxes and the basically the promotional material that was sent by the book companies, the record companies, the movie studios.
What about the porn? I mean, that must have been like a huge.
I was getting to that. And all of the porn. The porn was, plenty. There was porn for days. It was unbelievable.
Jesus, I can't even imagine. And that was all on
Howard preference, Chad.
No, it was all DVD. What'd you say?
DVD, okay, right.
What was Howard's preference when he gets first?
Howard
dibs,
never
right?
took the porn. I mean,
Okay.
there was never one porn tape that was
No
or
gay
DVD
porn.
that was ever sent to Howard. I can absolutely 100% say that
Curious.
without a shadow of a doubt.
No
Yeah,
gay
you know
porn,
what, he
Monique.
doesn't want anybody. You know, he's so self-conscious about that kind of shit.
Yeah,
I
that's
can't
the other
even-
thing. All the porn that was sent in was what you would call traditional porn. So that's another thing about this show.
Well,
that
we're gonna get to
changed.
that. We're definitely gonna get to that. So, at what point did you then? So, how did you transition from being back office guy?
So what happened
No,
was
sorry, office guy, not back office. Office.
like office in the back, but not back office, not the
Right.
show office, like the back end of the show office. This
Right.
this office was literally on like K-Rock Row. So across from me was that guy. His name escapes me. He had the show in the late morning, early afternoon on K-Rock. He was like a cool dude. They used to come bring him in on the show sometimes. I just can't remember
He
his
was a
name.
hybrid between
Mark
like,
Hogan?
Chris.
Booker?
Chris something maybe. Booker, that was it.
Yep.
Chris
Yep.
Chris Booker.
He
Yep.
dated Jennifer Lopez's sister.
Right. He used to
Linda.
go on with her all the
Yep.
time.
Linda Lopez.
Yep.
Yes. So Booker's office was
I have to tell you, the chat is making me cry. Like, I'm not even joking. I'm just sitting here, just watching you guys be so ridiculous. It's just the funniest fucking
Yeah, it's the
thing
best.
ever. Just 2 thumbs up to you guys.
I should
seriously.
say this, Monique. Moldred, Two Master Knows All, of course, brought that up before. I thought of that too, but I thought Moldred came much later after what he's talking about, so I didn't bring it up.
Does Moldred even sound like something we would know about in the 2000s? Like,
No, I don't.
seriously.
I think it came later, right after.
Oh, somebody
during
look
the-
that up for us and let us know when Moldred
I
was
was
the
thinking
thing.
that during the show, and I.
Yeah,
stopped
yeah,
it.
it's
yeah.
like
you're
right
right.
across from where the Anne-Marie back office was. So we were really off the beaten path. But what I would also have to do is I would get notes from the show that would then have to be run to Tom Chiasano's office. So it would go from, basically like Gary's office down to Anne-Marie's office and then passed over to Tom Chiasano's office. And that was like a rundown of the show, and they would just kind of go through things. And I don't know if he had to sign off on something or what. And I'd also sometimes have to go and get releases, but that was, again, more for the people in the front, the front side of the back office.
Right.
So what I did was, I was working for Anne-Marie. She leaves, kind of to my own devices for a short amount of time, but that's when I got more introduced to Laura Lackner, Howard's assistant, which is, a part of my life I wish I didn't have to talk about. Because,
sorry about
I
that.
have
CPSD.
not the best things to say about her, but working for
John,
Laura.
John, you're all like, oh, sorry about that, Chad. Such PTSD.
It is. I'm trying to think, because if you had to talk about some horrible boss you had, I don't know how much I'd dive in like this. Just because it's part of the entertainment world, the lowest form.
The
you
face
know.
that he has when we actually play a clip of Laura is just actually
Yeah.
priceless.
It's exactly what you think.
It's everything and more. Yes, exactly.
But still being an intern, they hired Tracy Millman in the process.
Oh.
So I was there for the
Wow.
transition from Anne-Marie to Tracy.
So Tracy basically took over for Anne-Marie.
Correct.
Douche.
Yeah, what happened to Kathy Tobin?
Who?
Douche.
I don't remember that name.
She was, I guess she predated Anne-Marie.
No, I don't know her.
No, she must have just, I don't know. She made an Irish exit.
I think I know the name. Like I've heard the name, but I don't know her personally.
Yeah, she was the office manager most of the K-Rock time.
Okay, so
Yeah,
then you were there
yeah.
for Tracy's tenure.
I was there for Tracy's literal first days, and I saw, I was looking her up on Twitter recently. She had shared something that she got on her first day of work, and I was trying to remember if it was something that, I was in the presence for. But I even remember when she was brought around for like her initial introduction,
Yeah.
and like I remember walking around with her, maybe Gary and somebody else, and like showing her parts of the studio, showing her Robin's studio,
Tour.
the K-Rock studio off to the side. I just remember walking around with her, but she was tough when she first.
Did you see her featured on the air at Sirius, Chad? When she
Later
was
on,
eviscerated?
later on I did, and that was the Tracy that I knew in the back.
Right. She was
tough.
Monique. You saw that she eviscerated Gary, Benji, just acid tongue, almost
She's
like
that
you.
chick. She's that woman. And you know what? As a female, I could never work for somebody like that. I mean, I feel like it's really weird when women come into a position like that and they're,
It's a dick
they are who
move.
they are. I mean, people show you who
No,
they
no.
are.
In general, it's a dick move. You come in and people are hustling to be interns and whatever, and you feel it's life mission to make their life miserable.
Oh, Xavier, I agree 100%. I was
Stupid
thinking about this
fucking
yesterday.
flex.
The
It
the
really
hazing
is.
thing. I don't understand the hazing thing.
But there
I don't
is-
get it. I don't
but-
understand what that's supposed to do. It's shot. You just want to make the person
It's
feel like
because
No,
shit.
they went through it.
it's a fucking
get it.
ego trip. Is all it is.
Yes.
talked
And
about
people
Bullies.
love to give people their misery.
I don't
Fuck
get it.
her. Fuck Tracy.
Why would you drive away a good talent, Monique, and haze them? What does it do? What is it? I don't
Because you
understand.
can.
It's an
Because you
ego
know
thing,
what?
dude.
Yeah.
And,
That's all it
and
is.
you never want somebody to be better than them. That's
Oh
it,
yeah,
too.
totally. That's all it is.
You know, there's always that fear of replacement, fear of somebody,
Yes.
bigger, better,
Absolutely.
smarter, prettier, whatever. And
Yeah,
it's,
but you know what? Sooner than later, those people usually get fired too.
they have to. It's a stupid fucking flex. I can't stand the hazing ritual that, I mean, he gets into it much, much more than this, but it's just so crazy to me that this is the way you treat
Yeah, but
people.
hazing implies it's jolly and jovial. When all it is just someone fucking being a miserable bastard. To
Oh,
people.
it is. It's
This is
miserable
somebody,
bullying.
this is
That's all it
somebody
is.
coming in brand new, though, too. Don't forget. So Tracy's like brand new to the organization, and
Fuck
she comes
Tracy.
in like a douche.
Monique
Fuck
is
her.
spot on. It's just you're absolutely threatened by that person taking over your job. That's really what's deep down inside of you. Yeah,
I agree.
there's nothing else.
And on top of that is the fact that it was done to them. So they're like, fuck it. I'm
Oh,
in a
yeah.
position of power now.
100%.
And I'm
Don't make it
gonna-
better for the
100%.
next generation. It's all about me.
Exactly. Exactly. Gungadun says, here you go, increase your interns much better as Bon Jovi.
Well, he's a year ahead of us right now.
You guys are killing me. Okay, here we go.
Yeah.
And she seems like she has always been that person. Girl has told me stories about her. So it's like it's just, she's been
She
always
was
been-
tough, but I got along with her. So
Of
she
course.
and I worked
can.
pretty well together, but she could be a ball breaker at times. And basically, when she started, that's when I started to be like, "What about me? Like,
Right,
I'm
what am I
just an
doing?
intern, you know? Like,
Feel
all right,
free.
I'm 20, yeah, I'm 23, I think, at that point. Like, all right, I've already had jobs in the workforce before, not here. I've worked like in minor league baseball, so I've been around like entertainment a little bit from the sports side. So I went to them and was like, hey, can I like talk to you seriously about, is there something that I can do for the system? So that's how I ended up working for Howard's production company, or I don't know if it's a
112.
production company or if it's
112.
yeah. Well, I worked for 112
Yep.
Incorporated. I became a paid employee of 112 while interning. So I would start my morning at the show, walk over to Howard's building, and do 112 from about 12:30 in the afternoon to like 5:30 at night.
So were you considered part-time then? I mean, it's such a weird.
Yes.
So you're
Yes.
a part-time employee.
Correct. So I was making a whopping $10 an hour.
Woohoo!
Hey,
Don't all
Chad,
get
I-
up. Don't all get up.
Still more than
I listened
McDonald's.
to you on the show with Hughesy and Carl. I did the math for you. So it's 6 hours of airtime was your whole salary. 6 minutes. 6
So,
minutes.
well, that we'll get to that. That's when I got offered a position with like a full-time position with 112.
okay.
But I did the back and forth for I would say maybe like October to February is when I did the. Oh no, October to December is when I did the back and forth, and then I stayed on with them until February. But during that time that I was there is where the final days of K-Rock.
Right, because they were
Yes.
moving over to Sirius that next year.
And
Hey,
it
Mo.
was nuts. It was like
Pause.
touch and go, because if you remember,
So
That is making me
on
cry.
your planet, aren't you a few? Wait, never mind. Never mind.
I gotta say, Monique, I don't know how the chat's going. I think he's a phenomenal rock on tour. I think he's a great storyteller. I liked him a lot. I really do.
I know the chat is just making me cry. Xavier, I'm sorry. What were you trying to say?
Nothing. I'm kind of stupid.
I love Howsy football rights here. I couldn't agree more. They
What?
have a job for JD, but they can't make one for this guy.
Because he
my
has
God.
self-esteem.
It's so good. No, he's so competent though.
No, but
right?
that's what I mean.
I know. So they don't want
Oh,
competent
I'm
people.
totally lost, guys. Sorry.
You're right.
Okay, just so you know, Benjamin and Beth's principal are making me fucking cry
What else is
in
there?
the chat. they're just being so ridiculous.
Yeah.
I am tearing. Okay, but yes, you have to just give this guy a chance because he really has some really good stuff.
Oh,
to
I
tell.
liked him a lot. I think
He
he's
didn't want
excellent.
Howard mentioning
I didn't
Sirius.
do that, but
at
yeah,
all.
that's a good point.
Yeah, right. So there were days where there were threats that he was just going to be pulled off the air,
Yeah.
and we weren't going to be going back on.
Justifiably so, though. To be honest with you, I mean, who the fuck wants their lead guy talking about the fact that he's leaving and bringing everybody with him?
Chad, do
Basically.
you think he secretly wanted to be pulled off the air, but the only way he couldn't promote Sirius if he was pulled off the air, so he had to do clever innuendos for 4 months leading up to Sirius? Do you think he secretly wanted 4 months off?
Possibly, knowing the trend that we've seen, in the last few years.
Yes, I do
And
too.
which-
Possibly, but I also think it was a part of the identity of the show was to buck the system and be the rebel. So I think it had a little bit more to do with that. But I can very, very clearly remember there were days where we had to like take documents and shred them and like get rid of things. Yeah, I swear to God. Yeah, because it was like, there were threats of being pulled off the air, and there were like days where they were like, yeah, you're going to come in tomorrow and there's going to be no show.
That's
And then
great.
keep pushing
It was that
buttons.
serious.
They
Right,
keep
right.
Pushing and pushing.
But that's what I loved about being there. That's why I
Absolutely.
wanted to be at
Poking
the
the
show
bear.
because there was the badass of radio at the time. This is 2005. It's a different world, when he moved to Sirius, and then start to curse a little bit more. There's more of the
We loved
explicit stuff happening. It was weird because you felt more in an elite like rebel spot when you're still on regular radio because you got to be creative.
Right.
Exactly, and it's more theater of the mind than it is. All right, here's some chick,
Correct.
getting off on the fucking Sibian, and so now you can watch it. It's a very, very different dynamic, I would think. I didn't realize that you were there into the serious transition, which actually gives us even better questions to talk about with you. So, at what point did you wind up going over and being like full time Laura Lackner?
Well, there was that gap between when he left K-Rock end of December to when he started at Sirius, maybe February or March. From what I recall, it wasn't right away. There was
he went
break.
to Sirius. Went to January 9th, 2006.
But did he actually go on January 9th?
Yes, that's the
full-time?
first day he went on. He did
Okay.
test shows before.
All right, so I was there for the test shows.
Okay.
I was there for one of the first tours of the Howard, wing of Sirius.
Right.
I'm trying to remember. Just remember the break. Maybe we went off the air like what was the last show? Like the 15th or something?
Yeah, December.
Really?
Exactly. December 15th, they go on that huge Christmas break, and then they transition to Sirius. They pop up on January 9th.
Okay. So by that point, I moved over to 112 on a more full-time basis, but maybe I was doing like 10 to 4 or something at that point. Still not like a full-time employee, still making $10 an hour. But I could say without a shadow of a doubt, and being a fan of Howard, the last day that he was on K-Rock was my favorite work day ever. I mean, it was
the Hard Rock Cafe party with Sheryl Crow. And
so the interns were not invited to that.
Really?
No. The interns stayed back at the station, which is where we basically had our own intern party at the studio. And a lot of stuff was going on. There was a lot of debauchery and things going on that probably interns had maybe Infinity or whoever the hell was K-Rock at that point known what was going on. There would have been some heads rolling, but we were taking pictures in Howard's chair. We were going to Robin's booth. We were going all over the place. My claim to fame for the last show is that I carried the tickle chair through the March series. And there is photographic evidence.
How many interns were you at that point?
How many what?
Interns were you?
I want to say maybe between like 8 and 10. I don't remember the exact amount. Maybe even 6. I don't remember. I just remember Brandano, myself, Adam, these 2 girls, one named Caroline. I forget the other girl's name. And then this other kid with like a mop top hair. I forget. Maybe his name was Mike as well. Those are the only ones I remember. There were a few others.
Okay, so then now you're working for Laura. Now, curiously enough, did you not have any interest in being part of the Sirius XM thing versus working for 112?
I wanted to work at 112.
Interesting. Now, why is that?
Wow.
Because I would think that going into Sirius would also give you another little notch on your resume, just in terms of going where you wanted to go.
I just thought working for Howard Stern's personal company was going to look better for me in what I wanted to do on more of a back end side of entertainment.
In hindsight,
So-
is that the right move? Or what's your thoughts? now?
Yeah, I think it was because, I worked for NBC for 10 years. And basically, because of what I did with Howard is why I had the job.
Amazing.
Yeah. And I'll tell you what, every subsequent job interview I've ever had, if you don't think that the main topic is working for Howard, you'd be nuts. And I worked for WWE as well. People ask about the Howard stuff more. And I worked for NBC for 10 years. Basically,
Chad, before you came on, Monique and I were talking about the parallels really quickly of Vince McMahon and Howard, how he kind of uses up employees and he's this weird entity and nobody has benefits and everybody walks away bitter. And that's like the wrestlers with McMahon. They all hate him.
It's like the wrestlers. But so when we'll get to it, but I left the Stern world to go to WWE. So,
but you knew the animal. That's why.
But that's why I did it, because I was like, nothing can be worse than this, and I was wrong because WWE was a lot worse.
Chad, those were.
Was there anything you needed me to pause for? I had to go get the Mr. Whiskers. You'll never walk alone, so we can.
Oh no,
with that.
Not really.
I'm about to leave, just so you know.
Oh, you're not going to stay for your finale?
Now it's an hour and a half away.
You can come back for it later. Yes, it's 30. Yes, it's an hour and a half away.
Oh, you were recording of him singing it, Monique?
Oh, it's the funniest thing.
Okay, I don't think I've heard. I don't believe I've heard it.
Well, you're gonna get a copyright strike again.
Yeah,
get a copyright
Jerry
strike.
Lewis
For all fucking things.
You know what though? It's worth it. It's not a copyright strike. It'll just be one of those things that says I can't monetize this. Yeah. But it's the end of the year. I don't really give a shit.
YouTube will donate
okay, well,
muscular dystrophy.
Good night, everybody.
All right, bye, sweetheart.
All right, X-Man.
Hey, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, everyone.
Happy New Year, Xavier.
See you later.
For the Stamford offices in Connecticut?
Yeah, so when I got to WWE, I worked at the TV studio, which is not the big tower that you see off 95. It's like a couple blocks in.
Okay.
Oh, so but were you still living in Jersey? In Jersey,
yeah.
or oh, so you were schlepping all the way to Connecticut for this?
I
Jesus.
was. Hey, have car, we'll travel. That's the mentality that you had. But so when I transitioned to working for 112 exclusively, even though I did not want to be at Sirius, because I didn't want to be a gopher and I didn't want to be, the guy getting coffee and stuff. That's pretty much what I ended up doing when I worked at 112.
I bet you it was worse because you had to work for that sphincter puckering voice that I was, John sent me a clip or two today, and it was basically about when Laura was asking for a raise and when Laura didn't want to be known as his assistant but wanted to be his executive assistant. And, I probably bypassed this just out of necessity, but I did not realize how sphincter puckering and inducing her voice really was. So this is a little clip I wanted to play. Apparently she had purchased for him a breath analyzer, and it scaled from 1 to 4 how bad your breath was. And the reason she did this was because she figured he would need it if he was going to start dating. So as I was cutting up these clips, I'm like, oh, that's what she sounds like. So let me play a little snurch of it for you.
Hey, Laura.
Hi.
How are you?
Hi.
It had nothing to do with your breath.
Be honest. Seriously, be honest.
Listen,
don't hold back.
No, I was in Gracious Homes one day.
Go ahead.
And the guy in front of me happened to have in his hand, and he was kidding to the person behind the counter that he was going to be dating soon. And so I just said, gee, maybe that's good to get to Howard.
Oh, so it had nothing to do with you?
Just because of that suggestion.
Because if I'm a bad breath guy, I want to know. I want someone to tell me.
You're not. It had nothing to do with that. I just thought in the future, if you ever decide to date, that you might want it. You might want to check.
Imagine me checking out before a date, but this is saying I have.
Okay. So she's one of those women who definitely is the Upper East Side Jewish woman.
I knew you were going to pounce on that.
Just thinks that she is in control of everything, and this is the way she is.
Yeah, you see Chad's CTSD coming through his Major League Baseball insignia right now.
I see it steaming out the upper portion of his fitted cap right there. Yeah, he's he's a little stressed at this.
Monique, Katie Aldana, and Autobot have a great. Katie Aldana goes, he went from one fake storyline place to another place with fake storylines from the Stern Show to the WWE. That's so great.
So true.
Autobot's
So
just
It
true.
is
that
like
voice.
I swear it's really going down memory lane because I don't think I've heard her voice since I left. I had a voicemail from her on my like old like Nokia phone, you know, way back
Chad,
in the day.
it's Laura.
Oh, I kept it for I don't know why. I had it on a phone till like 2009-ish. And I just was like, I can't listen. I can't hear that voice because I just didn't like her. She just wasn't a nice lady.
Yep, I don't blame you.
Tell us a little. Okay, so tell us a little bit about your job. So
Okay.
here you are now. You're working for 112 exclusively. You're no longer part of the
Correct.
K-Rock family.
Correct. So I was pretty much, you know, like, look, I want to make the money. I want to get going with my career. I want to start moving in the right direction. Howard Stern empire is about to grow with Sirius. So it's only going to be better. It's only going to be a little more, maybe not as, you know, and I hate to say, like, not that I didn't want to do the grunt work. I just was ready to work as like a real employee, not
a real job.
continuing the grunt stuff that I had avoided at the show. Right. I never got anybody's lunch at the show. I never got anybody's coffee. I never had to take anybody's orders. Never to do that. At 112 was a different story because now it wasn't that you were just doing it for the show, but now you were running errands for Howard and Beth, essentially. And, you know, from my interactions that I had with them, they were always very pleasant. Howard never said one word to me, ever. Beth was very nice. She was very cordial. Very respectful, exactly like how you would think she comes off to people on air. She was that way to me, you know, in person.
And you had me cracking up during the 3 minutes you were on with Carl and Hughes because we've called Howard everything from the Barbados Goblin to Wigarachi to Wigferatu to Wigabifida. You called him a standoffish carrot, which is so simple and brilliant at the same time.
Yeah, you sit in the corner of the elevator like a carrot, like standing.
Oh my God, that's so good.
Wall. Like I'm almost positive that I was on an elevator ride with Howard, Beth, and Regis.
Yeah,
at the same time.
That would be true. That would be correct.
I saw Regis all the time. He was always awesome.
Yeah, Regis was always a good guy. So full disclosure, I one time, just for shits and giggles, because I happened to have been looking for a new apartment in the city, I saw that something was available at Millennium Tower, and it just so happens that the apartment was on the floor that you enter their apartment on.
Right.
And so, of course, I recorded the whole thing, and everybody's like, "Oh, you're such a fucking stalker." I was like, in what world do you think I would know that apartment would be on that particular floor in that particular space where they happen to live? So we want to swing back into the
Monique,
Grayskull Millennium.
Yeah.
Is this you?
So we'll go back.
Yeah, it's me. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm sorry. Yeah. It's always fascinating to me how Howard, who is, you know, he's misanthropic and he's afraid of mankind. I'm afraid of Americans. He doesn't want to be around anybody. And yet he lives in the center of Manhattan, right in Lincoln's. It doesn't get more in the center of Manhattan where everybody's buzzing by. It doesn't make any sense. You think he'd be hiding down in Soho or something like that, or Tribeca, but he's right in the center of Manhattan. It doesn't make any sense to me.
He's in the center of people. But he needed that showiness, you know, and don't forget that what's his face lived right down the block from him in Trump Tower. Who's the one I was friendly with? I used to see all the time.
Oh, Karmazin.
Mel Karmazin, right, lived right down the block from him. So I'm sure Mel was like, "You should come, you know, be on the upper West Side." I think he was probably the impetus for him being there for sure.
I like.
Let's listen to his work schedule.
So what I was talking about. So I started to do some work, but they had me doing this project that was called the Bonded Book Project. Okay. Sounds real exciting, right? It sounds like you're on the edge of your seat to find out what it was.
Oh, we want to know. Believe us.
This was literally cataloging every piece of newspaper print, television story, magazine article ever written or produced about Howard.
Yeah.
Ever.
So if it mentions his name in type.
Everything. And they had it in this, you know, the old papers with the frilly ends that you had to rip off,
Yep.
right? One of those giant books that Iron Mountain would come with deliveries of the stuff, and you'd have to go through it to make sure it.
John, you know who Iron Mountain is, right?
No, I don't. I was going to ask you that. I didn't want to interrupt him.
Yeah,
I
Iron
don't know
Mountain
that
is they
Thank you for stopping
they collect and put together ephemeral stuff. You know,
Okay.
they used to see their trucks in the city all the time. They like have notes, they have paperwork, they are the ones, they are the collectors of this kind of information.
It was still there. Oh, this one's there. You highlighted it off. It was maddening that I had to do that. Did that for months.
Well, Chad, you were there for the huge. I've never seen Howard. I mean, he's a huckster. I mean, he's a salesman when he needs to be. That's the only time he gets out there. So you were there for the Blitz Too Serious. So he's doing all that promotional stuff, and I'm sure that's why. And he's trying to star make Beth. Right. All that stuff went on 60 Minutes and blah, blah, blah. Best damn sports show. And then Beth's trying to be a star now, too. So she's on Casino Cinema, and she's on FHM and Buckwald, right? So that's a huge task at that time.
Wait, but you were only doing it for Howard, right?
But I wasn't doing anything that was current. We're talking, I was going back to 1987. So Howard was mentioned in the Philadelphia Inquirer, you know, talking about DeBella, right?
Right, in 1989.
They had that, in 1989. They had that, you know, in print. They had that logged in Iron Mountain storage, right? Howard appeared on, you know, the Joe Schmo morning show in 1981 when he was in wherever, Texas Washington. Or Detroit or Washington at that point. Yep. They had that logged and in storage and recorded. So he's got the most comprehensive, you know, database
library
of his own
himself.
Shit. But then my desk that I sat at was around the corner from a video, like literal tape room where I forget the guy's name. He was probably the nicest guy I worked with during the 112 days. Maybe his name was, wasn't Chris. That was the other guy I hated. But this guy was, he would literally, he recorded everything Howard saw, period, at that point.
You're talking about saw in terms of
what viewed. So anything that Howard was on, that guy was going to record it. But anything Howard wanted to watch.
Oh, JD Harmon?
No, it wasn't JD.
Oh,
no.
Before his. Oh shit.
JD was at the show at that.
Right.
During that point, I forget the guy's name. He was the nicest guy there, but he recorded all Howard's appearances. But then anything Howard viewed, like would watch, consume at that point, not streaming, not anything like that. They were still.
How would you tell him, "Hey, I feel like watching X-Men or something," and then he would record it?
Correct.
So were you in an actual office space apart from Kira?
So it was an apartment.
I love this. Your own place, your own space.
So 112 was in an apartment inside the office building.
Like a designated apartment away from their penthouses.
Couple floors down.
Right.
Maybe the 8th floor.
By the way, you need to know an apartment in that building is like $4,000 a month. In the
what was the one you visited, Monique?
It was about probably about 5,600, but this was years later, so I'm thinking at the time it was probably about 4,000.
What was it to buy? Did they give
Oh,
you
I have no idea. I have no idea. Probably $1 million.
Yeah, I would even go higher than that. And Howard's building,
you know, he's talking a small 1-bedroom. It had a kitchenette, for God's sakes. So, you know, it was probably not even refinished or anything like that. It probably wasn't updated. It was probably just like an old apartment in the building. He probably had them on the lookout for it, and that's what. But the fact that he has the entirety of 112 Productions working out of an apartment at Millennium Towers is kind of shocking to me. I have to be honest.
Oh, it is, and you'll come to find out, everyone on the chat, he's not allowed to even sniff where they are. It's just bizarre how little. He's actually sequestered, but in the same building. It's the most bizarre thing I've ever heard.
So weird. All right, here we go.
I don't remember, but or maybe it was 12th floor. I don't know. Maybe
Millennium starts at the 20th floor. Remember?
Okay, well, whatever it was, I just remember having to go up not as high as where the penthouse was, and. 2005, mind you.
So they rented an apartment as your office.
Had an apartment. So you came in like you would come into an apartment. There was a kitchenette off to the right. Then there was, walk a little bit forward, then I guess it would have been a bedroom. That's where the tape thing was. And then there was I guess like an alcove. That's where my desk was. There was another computer.
Are we just like doing the visual of having like 4 people in a room or in like a 1-bedroom apartment?
That's what I'm visualizing. Yeah, yeah.
Right? That's reconfigured to be an office space, which I'm not even sure is legal, but okay.
That's a good point, right? Is that even legal? That's true.
Yeah.
Everything's regulated in New
I'm
York.
sure he wrote it off, but I'm not sure that it was
Oh, that's
legal.
a great point.
And anyway, right? So yeah, that's actually probably not legal, but okay. And so you have a guy whose entire job it is to just record things that Howard might want to watch.
Just
Right?
try to just anything he could potentially. And this is like, I'm kind of go back. So it's 05. Was the friggin' DVR wasn't around? Was what was the other thing that
TiVo.
before? Yeah, right.
Yeah,
So
this
I
is
don't
totally
know.
TiVo time.
This is TiVo time. 05. Okay, was it even okay?
But the
'Cause it was
dude literally recorded everything for him to watch. I'm floored by that. It just amazes me that there's one person to do that. But
I'm
okay.
trying to visualize the days of just jamming a blank VHS tape into a VCR, hitting record, because that was my move forever and ever. And I'm just trying to remember if that predated.
2006 DVDs, because remember he was talking about the porn was all DVDs. So it was definitely DVDs. Yeah, okay.
On the other side, and then almost like a cabinet space that was built in where this guy Chris would sit, who was assistant to the assistant of Laura. So he was Laura's assistant. So he's assistant to the assistant.
It's that George Costanza.
Right, yeah. And that's where he's at. Now that guy was a piece of shit. I don't remember. It's Chris something, I want to say. He was a piece of shit. He was such a weirdo. He creeped me the fuck out. And
why?
He's just a creepy guy. He just was weird. His aura was weird.
Was he older? Was he?
He was. I mean, maybe I was 23, so maybe he was like 29, 30,
right,
something like that. He had been. I think he had been an intern at one point. Did kind of the same, but he was at the assistant to the assistant spot, and we were all in this room.
Who's this person, Tumasta?
Yeah, expound on that. Chris Costa. Where did you get that from?
Yeah, let us know what that is, because we had no idea who he was talking about. We kind of
detailed biography of him.
You need to know everything.
And then Laura,
just the 3 of you basically worked in that?
3 or 4, whoever could fit into that space. And then Laura was behind a screen door. Like you would have to open it like you would open your back door to go to your deck. Like she was closed in there. And it was just this big room with her desk in the middle, and there was just stuff everywhere. And it was one of the worst things I've ever done. It just
could you sleep there if you wanted to?
No,
but, no, there was no.
Okay.
Where am I going to sleep?
I've never heard of an apartment
chair?
with no bedroom. They somehow made an apartment with no bedroom.
No, I mean, I think
it's not a bedroom. It's just the other room that used to be a bedroom, but now is a room where I sits in the desk and record shit.
Okay,
yeah,
that's pretty much what it was. So do you think that they still run it that way? Do you think Laura still has like an apartment space in his building?
I don't know.
Just
I've
curious.
never heard anybody ever mention 112 ever again. I've never heard of anybody working there. You know, I don't know. I so far out of the loop at this point, I never kept track.
Oh yeah, 100%. I'm just wondering if it had been like that for a long time, so therefore that's the way it came.
I guess it was, because even though before I started, I never knew what 112 was until I started working for the show, and then I would see it all over the place, and and then basically, so then the structure was like, so Howard would say something to Laura, then Laura would say it to Tracy, and then Tracy would then distribute that to the people at the show.
Hey, Chad, I jotted down a couple of names from the 112 pension plan. Maybe this rings a bell. I don't know if these are the people. Michael Fox.
I don't remember.
Matthew Hansen.
That one sounds familiar.
Okay. Richard Ruth.
No, I don't know that one.
Eric Sanders.
Man, no. That doesn't sound familiar.
Who are these people?
Rich Ventura. I guess he's Jesse's.
Maybe I'm saying his name is Chris. Okay. Maybe it was Rich.
Okay, Rich Ventura.
Might have been him. I got. You know what? I'm gonna write that one down because now I want to find out if that was him or not.
I got a hold of the
assistant to the assistant.
That sounds familiar. Ventura sounds familiar now that you say that.
Did we look into him, Johnny?
Did I?
Yeah, after we talked about
No,
this.
I never followed up on Rich Ventura. I wish I did. I was thinking about doing that. I just got distracted. That's actually a great idea.
I never
Or
looked
it's going
into
to trigger a wrestling thing with you. That's what I would. First thing I would
Yeah.
think it was Jesse when I see that.
Exactly.
But Monique, I got that from the 112 pension plan. That was the original video with Laura's interview on it.
Oh, okay,
There's
okay,
a
okay.
picture on it.
All right. So then how did you wind up being that person then? How did you wind up being assistant to the assistant?
So if his name is Rich or Chris or whoever it was leaving.
Okay.
So I, wanted to make my intentions made to rise the ranks and not wanting to make $10 an hour anymore.
Sorry. So they're talking about Chris Costa in the chat, and apparently he's an intern, and Katie Aldana kind of remembers him. Two Masters going crazy. Chris Costa. Two Masters. Chris Costa was there until 2013. Maybe confusing with someone else. Okay, so I looked him up on Mark's Frig, and I just went randomly, and I'm sure you can find him a few times. All it says is, and I can go back and find other stuff, but it says another caller told Gary to lighten up over the whole thing. Ganji said he's not handling her. He said that Chris Costa is in charge of the girls now. He said it's almost a waste because he has a beautiful girlfriend. So I guess he worked for Howard TV at a certain point, or he maybe transitioned over to Howard TV.
Well, they're saying that he was like in the engineers.
Yeah, I don't think it's him.
Engineering department. I would text what's his face, but I just don't feel like it right now.
Richie Wilson.
I heard he was leaving. I went into Laura and I sat and we talked, and they ended up offering me his job as he was leaving.
Right.
And
now, but you knew what he did for a job, right? Like, because you saw him every day, so you knew.
I did, but I still wanted to move up. I had that. Whether I was there for 6 months or a year or 5 years or 10 years.
Of course.
I put my intentions out there. They offered me the job. The salary was $28,500 for the year.
Okay.
Even in 2005, that's very low.
Yeah. Not really.
Yeah. Who was I to say anything? It was the only job I was getting offered of that magnitude, but it still costs.
I'm just going to ride the wave, but it's a lot. That's your commuting there.
It still costs $20 a day to go into the city, via the bus, the way I went in. And I accepted it, but I had reservations from the second I accepted it.
Yeah, you knew already.
When I started training with whoever, Chris, Rich, whoever he was, I just was like,
I know what you're like.
I don't want to do this. I can't do this. I can't go I can't go to the grocery store to buy their groceries. I can't go down to some weirdo boutique in Lower Manhattan to pick up a dress for Beth. I can't coordinate the dog walking schedule for the dog walker. Like, I didn't want to do that. And I just like, you know what? Let me start putting feelers out there. And I got wrapped up and hired by WWE in a
Can you imagine that even something as minuscule as coordinating when the dog walker needs to be there has to be done by not Beth, not Laura, not.
I know. It's crazy. I know. We go on to ask him what's the most mundane thing normies do that they couldn't do for themselves, like shit like that. Just it would be easier for you to just do it yourself.
Just
than
text
delegate
the fucking
someone.
dog walker and say, "Hey, I need you here at like 9."
Why can't you do that? Right? It's like they can't even. And then he's driving around. Monique, tell everybody, like, so you think the shit's paid for? He just goes out and picks it up.
Absolutely,
for it.
Absolutely. Well, let's talk about that because he's coming to it, I think, right now. So let's go.
Rather quick fashion, even though it didn't take. I would have wanted it to happen faster, but it was still relatively quick by WWE standards. So once I got offered the job and I saw how shitty it was, I got the fuck out.
So tell us about the minutia, because we love this shit. We love
We're so stupid.
because Laura clearly is his conduit to everything, right? So Laura is like his right arm, just in terms of what she does, what she's in control of. She basically runs his day-to-day life. I mean, yes, I know you don't know about it anymore, but I'm still very curious what it's like since Mr. Freaked Out about fucking COVID hasn't left his chimney bill in like 3 fucking years. But we'll come back to that.
Yeah, it's weird because he was kind of the same way then. I mean, he would So you have to go back to the show too to know how the schedule works. So after the show would end, right, he would be like escorted out of the K-Rock studio, be brought to a side office where he would then rest and meditate, for X amount of time.
PM.
Yeah, before Ronnie went. Right. Before Ronnie would then, get him out and to his car and then leaving. So then he'd come back to the 112 building, go up to his room, and then essentially didn't leave. So
that's it.
A couple times when I saw him, he was in the elevator, and they were going for a walk or going to dinner or something. But that was really it. He was not, hey, Howard's got to be, whisked to this big meeting somewhere here. He's got to go to this, giant opening of this, boutique or
party.
Yeah, party. Something. I never saw any of that. It was he would come back and go up, and that was it.
Were you ever formally introduced to him?
So no.
Wow.
that would be the short way around it. We were supposed to as interns, right? The rumor was when you got hired or you got brought on as an intern, at the end of the internship, you were supposed to get time with Howard.
An audience.
Right? You were going to get a one-on-one thank you from Howard where you would get a signed Private Parts movie poster.
Wow. Oh boy.
And that was that was your party. That was what everybody told me as I was, leading up to it. The guy who helped me get the internship said, you get a couple minutes with Howard. They give you a poster and your internship's over.
DVD. Yep.
Because of how the show ended and because of its, quick exit, I saw the posters. They were there. I might have even had one at one point, but I never got one.
So, okay. So it's curious to me. So your interaction with him probably amounted to 10 minutes total in the entire time that you were there?
Hello. Hi.
That's it.
Wow. Monique, that's that speaks to the thing you had with the beach, your friend on the beach with him, right? Where he just no eye contact, nothing.
Just
good morning.
I had a friend, my friend Mike Ravatzis went to the CBS. He worked for CBS as a research person. That's when Howard did the Saturday Night Show. So he was forced to go to the upfronts. And so my friend's a huge Howard fan, and he goes there and he sees him. He's like, Howard, what are you doing here? I'm a huge fan. Nothing. Just iced him, looked straight up, sunglasses on, walked right by him, just crestfallen that his hero just blew him off.
Yeah.
Same thing.
I remember, Bon Jovi in the hallways, shaking hands with everybody.
Yep. Nice.
How you doing? Right? Bon Jovi lived in the same town that I lived in New Jersey. So I was able to say, hey, my guy, you live 10 minutes from where I live. Oh, that's so cool. Where do you live? Bon Jovi, who was just going to the bathroom from being in the studio, stopped and talked to everybody. And he would just leave every day. And, that was it. My favorite interactions at the show were with, guess who? It was with Artie. Because,
of course,
Artie'd have on that beaten to shit Yankee shirt on, every day. I had on a Met hat every day. So he'd be like, the Mets suck, blah, blah, blah. We'd go back and forth. But that was the, when everybody's leaving the show, we'd be, hey, have a good day. Thanks a lot. Mets suck. See you later.
Monique, Artie's thing is to emasculate Met fans and everyone's gay if you're a Met fan.
Because you're Mets, Jets, or the Giants, Yankees. That's just the way the world works.
Yep. Mets, Jets. That's it.
So wait, let's ask about, because there's so many other things we want to get into, but talk to us about Gary and how he treated people.
Gary, very, cool guy. I mean, he was okay. He wasn't overly cordial or friendly. Again, baseball talk with him. If I was in there doing the phones, which I did have to go and sub on the phones. Sending the messages. One of the stories I told on a show with Husey was when John called.
We wanted to talk about that for a minute.
That was in the first couple weeks that I was there.
And he would call in?
He would call the main line, say, I need to talk to Gary. And you go to Gary and you have the little paper. He would be, on the phone or he would be doing something. And, you hand the note, John, line 2. And every time John called, it was this. Wow. Which meant get rid of him. Get him. But John, what do you think? He's an asshole. He was short. So for a guy who answered phones for 15 years, he was such a dick to everybody that called in and spoke to. But Gary never took the call.
I'm told JD's the same way. JD's a complete douchebag to
very complete douchebag. Never liked the guy. Very minimal interaction, but just a fucking asshole every time I had any kind of
I
interaction
feel
with
like
him.
he has Asperger's or something. Like he just doesn't know how to interact with people. He's just
a
weird.
freaky guy to look at.
Yeah,
That's
he's
really
an
it.
innate arrogance about him. Speaking of arrogance, Chad, Gary is kind of full of shit there because Gary then goes on to visit John in L.A. to starfuck like 3 times after he's blowing him off on the phone.
Well, hey, I mean, sometimes you got to know where your bread is buttered and when you need certain things. And John is that stupid that he would just accept Gary then in because then he thinks Gary's his conduit back to the show.
And John deserves everything he gets, by the way.
Yeah, no, exactly. But Gary was okay. I had him sign a picture for my my girlfriend, now wife at the time, and from my brother, because I also had all the publicity photos. So I had all Howard's photos, I had Robin, I had Gary, and Gary sent a couple photos for us. So he was good. He was not like, oh my God, this great time me and Gary were having this conversation. He was okay.
What about Robin? Was she as sanctimonious?
No, very sweet.
Always says she's nice. Everybody.
That's
very
what Gorilla said, yeah.
Very sweet, very nice. $100 tip at Christmas.
Really?
Yep.
Okay, that's super sweet considering she didn't have to do anything.
Doesn't really know him either.
And a direct, not like a, hey, this is in your box, this is from Robin. No, this was a thank you for everything. Have a Merry Christmas.
See, super sweet. That's really nice. But I heard she couldn't keep an intern to save her life. Like that she was a little bit.
I don't remember if there was I think there was supposed to be a Robin intern and then like somebody might have just brought stuff to her, but I don't think there was a dedicated one.
Yeah, because they didn't, she wasn't able to keep them. I mean, they were supposed to kind of gather the news for her, do like all of that stuff for her, but apparently she was a little bit hard on them. What about Fred?
Minimal interaction, only really dealt with him when he would come for the glom. He was, again, one of the nicer ones. Just very little talking. He'd come in, say something to Tracy or Anne-Marie. He was fine.
You ever go to a King Norris show, Chad?
I never did, no.
No, you're missing out.
No.
It makes 2 of us.
Grillo still goes to them all the time.
I know.
He said he's going to be around. He'll go. I'm really good friends with Grillo, so we live right.
Never had an interaction with him.
Yeah, why would you? He was. I think
nope.
He was gone by then. But okay, so let's go back to being at. So, did you ever get invited into the actual penthouse?
I had to go once. To bring like food up.
Yeah.
And that was it. But they would give you, there was a key and you had, if you were, told to go up, you were authorized to go and you bring the key back and that was it. But I had to go one time.
What did they do with the food the other times? I know they're anorexic, but what did they do with the food the other time?
I don't remember. It was like Soup Nazi style. Like, remember like with the Soup Nazi, you had to hand the money and then, take the step over. It was like you were handed the key, you put the food in, you walk backwards out the door, close it behind you and hand the key back.
Did he have staff at his at the?
I don't remember. I think there were people there. I don't remember fully.
Okay. And I had another question about the apartment and about Beth. So basically what you would do is you would get into also the company vehicle.
Yes.
And go pick shit up. Like, is that the way it works?
Yeah. Either they gave you, cab fare out of like the petty cash, or they had like a Toyota Highlander that you had to drive through Manhattan. And honestly, 23 years old, I'd been to Manhattan a million times. First time I ever drove in Manhattan was in Howard's Toyota Highlander.
It's terrifying. Definitely.
It was scary as hell. I was
street driving in New York City.
God.
How do you park when you stop at these boutiques? You can't guarantee you can park regularly. You're driving around for hours. I just
remember frantically like having to go from one place to the next and getting it back. It was almost like a driver's ed lesson because the guy who I was working with was like in the passenger seat and it was like driver's ed because you're like
Monique
knuckled on my 10 and 2 like oh my god
is
if I bump into something because I'm gonna wreck Howard's bump.
Okay.
If you were Chad, I know you got a lot of friends, wouldn't you bring a wingman along with you and have them drive around while you did the deed and then pick you up so you don't have to worry about parking?
But how can you count on somebody if you're sitting there doing like some dick work like he was doing and it's 11 o'clock in the morning and all of a sudden they say, hey, you know, you got to run down to wherever in Soho and pick up a dress. You know, how are you supposed to have somebody on call to come
I
with
would
you?
just think some friend he has. I'm sure he had a bunch of friends that lived in the city, in and around, that would be curious in that setting to see what he was doing, just to help him out, just to help out a friend. I had a
I
girl
mean,
I was
he's a
seeing one
Jersey
time.
boy. I'm thinking no. You
We
know,
went to a party on the Upper East Side,
yeah,
and this is like in the late 2008, something like 2009.
yeah.
And it was her friends. It was in the high 90s. We drove in. We couldn't park. It was so frustrating. I volunteered. I'm like, you just go to the party. I'll drive around. Text me. I'll come back and pick you up. It was impossible. There were no parking garages. One of those
Yeah.
holiday things. It was so infuriating. You couldn't pay for parking if you wanted to. The way this is set up on where this was, it was easier for me. I didn't even know the people, so I'm like, fuck it. I'll just drive around for 3 hours and I'll just go on an adventure. You
Horrible.
text me and I'll pick them
It's
up.
horrible parking in
It,
New York. That's why you need to have a parking garage, which are exorbitantly expensive. I remember I used to park my car at this one spot where you needed to give them 24-hour notice. So you couldn't even get out like quickly if you needed to. This is
when
why I
I
always
lived with
say
my
I'd be
friends,
fucking dead
Monique,
in a zombie apocalypse.
they paid me to move their car across the street on an alternate side of the street parking in Brooklyn.
Yes, that's a very big job in the
Yep.
city. People do that. They have like a million fucking keys and they move everybody's car from one side to
It's
the other.
infuriating.
It's,
Don't move to New York, everyone. It's not 1979
I
anymore.
don't think anybody's trying to either.
Yeah.
So was there a usual like pattern of stuff that had to be done in terms of like picking shit up and
No pattern, but just, random. Hey, this thing needs to get delivered to Buchwald. So you'd walk from the office at the building to Buchwald's office, literally walk in, hand it to his people at the front desk and leave.
Did you ever meet Buchwald, Chad?
No, never did.
Wow.
Nope.
What's the most mundane tasks that humans do that you couldn't believe you had to do for them? Like a human being has to, you know what I mean? Like you couldn't believe that they couldn't handle it.
I don't know. I mean, that's hard because again, I never pictured having to pick up grocery orders for people, or like a specific like Chinese food order. Like I never thought I would be doing that kind of stuff. So that kind of crap. But I mean, the bonded book project for somebody like me who's, I still collect laser discs and VHS, right? Just because I love dead media. That to me was the most mundane thing I've ever worked on in my life because it was just like looking down at these letters and numbers.
Shit.
Oh my god! And it was like, can I watch this stuff? Like, if I'm gonna go through it, like, can I see it? And there's stuff like if I look for old Howard clips on YouTube and I see,
if Chad is getting paid $28,000 in 2005 or 6, how much do you think Laura was getting paid?
That's what we never really. That's definitely something to get for the DM because we went to ask him and never did. I have to say she's got to be. I'm gonna say low six figures if I had to ballpark it. Yeah,
Definitely
that's 7
low
minutes of the
six.
air, Monique. 7 minutes on the air for Howard is
I'm
Chad's
pretty
salary.
sure that, she probably started out somewhere around, let's say 40, 50,000, right?
Probably started at that. Yeah, that's good.
Yeah, and then she got into it. I have to tell you, 28.5, honestly, Xavier and I were talking about this the other day. I used to always start people at somewhere around like, 25 or $28,000. That was kind of like the
But
going
if
rate.
you knew you were working for a billionaire, Howard's salary was everywhere at that point. They were showing his salary because it was a huge news that he signed with Sirius. Now he knows he's working for a billionaire at that
Yeah, but
point.
he knows that. But Howard also knows, as everybody who works in an industry where somebody wants to use it as a stepping stone, A, the person's not going to last there that long. B,
Yep.
they're just there to put it on their resume. And C, you need to make at least 3 or 4 jumps before you make a salary that makes sense to you. I think that's just the way the world works. And John and I were talking about this after we hung up with Chad, about how, if I knew I was authorized to pay $35,000 to an assistant designer or something like that. And the worst thing you can ever do as an interviewee is when somebody asks you, what kind of salary are you looking for?
Yeah.
Because if I'm authorized to spend 35 and you tell me, you'd like to make 25, I know that I have 10,000 in the kitty so that if you ever want a raise, that I can automatically authorize another $5,000 and you'd love me for it because I just gave you $5,000 after like 3 months, knowing fully well that you undervalued yourself. Never,
Totally.
ever, ever, ever tell anybody how much you think you should make. You always turn to them and say, you need to tell me how much you think I'm worth. That's just the way it works. Because
Yes,
people
Rodney, I had Costanza's job. That's exactly what George Costanza did. But Monique, do you think going into that in '05, as we say, everything Howard touches dies. Like he either cuts you out of his life or he sues you. So how privy do you think Chad was to how toxic that is? That you really can't do anything. There's like 4 people that succeeded branching off in terms of what we consider success, like Scott Einzinger and Billy West, and that's about it. In
That's
terms
about it.
of right, I mean, it's a short list. I
It's a
consider
very
Casey successful just because we love him, and
And and
my
and
my
and to
definition.
some extent, John was successful. I mean,
Oh,
who the
totally,
fuck would
totally,
ever think he
absolutely,
would get a job working at,
right,
with Jay Leno, making,
absolutely.
quintuple what he was making on the Stern Show.
And for less hours and less
Less hours.
berating and a wait, just everything about it. There's no downside, zero.
Exactly. All right, let's continue.
See like an old news report from a random market he was in, like it takes me back because I'm like, oh, I had to log that crap, but I like wish I could have watched it at the time too. But no, it was just
Was
looking
there
at
like
it.
a time frame in order to have to get this shit done, or was there just
It
just
was
do it?
always like complete this so the next round can come.
Chad, did you have to monitor web activity, like if there was negative, the Stern Fan Network kind of stuff like that? Okay, you had nothing to do with looking for dirt.
Do you remember
or
the Stern Fan Network? Do you remember?
I
that
remember
stuff?
hearing about it, but no, I don't. No, I never had to do that.
Okay. Okay, let's talk about current Howard. Well, let's talk about a few Howard things. So, a couple of things that we talk about a lot on our show is the wig, the anorexia, the COVID protocol, and who he has become ever since Marcy Turk came into his life, right? So these are things that we love to chat about. So let's talk about the wig thing. Thoughts?
I mean, how can you not think it at this point? It's very freaky when you see him, and like for him to be known for that look, everybody knows you can't hold it forever,
Right.
I mean, want to go
Especially
back
when
to
you're almost
wrestling.
70.
You want to go back to wrestling, Hulk Hogan. There's the rumor that Hulk Hogan wears the bandana with the hair hanging down, because
Yep.
he's
Wrestlers have
almost
to remain
70 years
ageless.
old,
Yeah.
So
Yep.
you can't. He's always had that weird thing about the age. As it is, I mean, even in the 90s, when he was on that huge ride that they were on with everything that was clicking, he was still getting older and it was still like kind of like, ugh, like some of the things that they would do.
Yes.
And in Sirius, the same, like they're getting a little more obscene with it, but now like he's an old man, and I said this on a show with Husey too, I think, about, John's gripes with how he's not the same guy anymore. And he's this and he's that. And I said, he's just an old Jew who wants to play chess and take pictures. That's all he's become.
Yeah.
That's absolutely who he is. John, what do you think?
No, I was going to say, so he has you must know, Tony Coburn, the 24-hour hairstylist.
Yeah.
What kind of interactions did you have with her, if any?
I didn't have any interactions with her. I remember having minimal interaction with Ralph.
We'll talk about
the
Ralph.
at the 112 thing, and it was it's just like passing thing, but just like weird aura.
It sounds like you were doing Ralph's job, Chad. It sounds like you were picking up clothes, which essentially was Ralph's job, and I guess he was delegating it onto you.
But you could see him. You can see Ralph being that entitled prick that he is, going into a store and saying, we'll have that, and then somebody will come pick it up later.
Yes,
and that would be
spot on.
If that's how it was, that's what it was then. But I remember more stuff for Beth than it was Howard. So he picks out Beth's clothing too.
Yes,
it was more Beth, but I think it's more of a general like chip on everyone's shoulder. Once they're in that world, they don't let it go, and they still think it's the heyday, and they still carry themselves like they are rock stars, and that's what I can't get past.
See, this is the truest thing that he has to say about this.
He's phenomenal insight, Monique, as someone who's out of the loop, And one question I didn't ask him, and I would have loved to, it was kind of written down, and he had to go and whatever. But like, what was it like for him to wade back into the Stern universe and see how many people hate him now? the deluge of fans that have turned on him because he wasn't privy to that. So he goes back in, he's checking in and shit, and he sees what happened to all these crazy Stern. They all hate him now.
They all hate him. But the sense of entitlement that all the fucking douchebags that are still there, and many that were there is actually shocking. I love this part of the conversation that we're getting
He
into.
sees it on every level. His analysis on everything was spot. The hair thing is great too. He's like kind of got a hip take, even though he's not. He could care less. He's avoided their world for years.
Yeah.
Listening to John's demise, and all this crap that's been going on with him, listening to the people who've worked there, and you kind of you always feel like you're still a part of that universe, but you still think it's the mid 90s or the late 80s and you're still on top of the world. And that's where I also couldn't really connect with anybody because everybody was a fucking asshole a lot of the times. And I'm not like that. So I couldn't do it.
Well, they're all air whores, Chad. You're the opposite of that. Like you're trying not to get on the air. Everybody else's goal is to get on the air. So you're dealing with attention whore assholes. They're
even
by
not
nature.
The players, John, and you know how Nicole Bash used to call me constantly, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I would be on the phone with her every 2 days for 4 hours because she had nothing, right? She had nothing. When she died, or right before she died, she was living in the back of a espresso, like an Italian cafe that was in her neighborhood because she had been kicked out of her apartment. And I was living on the west side, I lived around the corner from Grollo, so we were always good friends. And he's like, one of the guys I know, like at the club around the corner, has a like a front door bodyguard kind of thing available. He's like, how awesome would that be for Nicole? To give her some money. And you would call Nicole and say, hey, there's this job. It might be great for you. I wouldn't do that. And it's like, you're living in the back of a fucking cafe right now with nothing.
Yeah.
But this is, they all have this sense of entitlement to more than they are worth. I mean, fuck even Shuli, who, I can't stand, but I'm trying to make amends with that. But, you were on a show where there were millions and millions of viewers, and you think that you can then take that and take it and be on your own and do the same thing, but you really can't.
And I never had, and Shuli came on as a staffer long after I was. I remember when Shuli would just call in as a caller,
right?
But I don't really like listening to Shuli because he has that chip on his shoulder that I'm talking about, and it's this look. So you're carrying, you worked for X and you're carrying that as your identity moving forward. Not that you're Shuli, I'm a comedian, I'm going to do this and that. It's Shuli of the Howard Stern Show. Let me tell you about all the Howard shit and let me do this. And I'm not singling him out, and don't want to be targeted by anybody. But it's the same thing when I saw Brent Hatley leave and carry that over. It was, I worked at the Howard Stern Show. I'm so great. Let me do this because you know me from Howard Stern. It's it doesn't work that way. You have to have something you can bring to the table. And yes, look, I wanted to be behind the scenes. But guess what? I've been podcasting for 8 years, and I get regarded as a good interviewer. I get told all the time, I carry shows very well. But that's because I'm naturally able to kind of dictate what I want to talk about. Not, hey, this. I mean, I've talked about Howard on the air, not in this detail, but I have an identity. These people who work there have this I
deserve this because this is who I was.
Yeah, there's a difference, Chad. I think when someone wants to be famous as opposed to someone wants to broadcast, there's a difference. They just want to be famous. So you're not actually bringing a skill set.
So used to the fawning and the, oh my God, you work for the Stern Show. Oh my God, you work for the Stern Show.
Yes.
And they're just so used to that once it goes away and their 15 minutes are up, then all of a sudden, I mean, I feel bad in some respects for Brent because, he did try to do that and did try to make it something. And it wound up being that his wife winds up, fucking handicapped people on a, on a bedroll somewhere. So how'd that work out? I kind of feel. It's just that they all have this sense of entitlement, and it just always amazes us because I think that Howard may not resign, but I think that a lot of the people that work for that show now are going to be in a really tight fucking spot when the show is over because the only job they've ever had is with Howard.
There's
lot
no
of
exit
them,
strategy.
The only job they ever had was with Howard. Like you said, this one was an intern. This one was an intern. This one was an intern. And so the only way they know how to do anything is the Howard way and the Stern way. So to be thrown out into the real world is going to be quite the wake-up call, I think, for some of them.
Yeah, you see the ones that did leave that, like, you know, Jackie, obviously. Jackie can go on, talk about being Jackie, talk about the show, but can go be a guest doing anything.
And tell jokes.
Yeah, Artie was the same way. Artie could go talk about his career, do this and that, talk about the show, have a great little insight, and make jokes and whatever. But there's other things that he can do. You see the lower hanging people, that's the identity, and it's just not a good look. And they come off like a bunch of arrogant pricks. And the ones we didn't mention, in the back office, Will.
I love that we completely forgot about some of these people, and he had made notes.
Like Will Murray?
He made notes on who he wanted to talk shit about.
I really liked. Will was a really good dude, but Jason was a fucking dick.
I can't even imagine.
I any interaction I had with that guy was just the worst part of my day. I mean, he was just an asshole. He was, and again, had this chip on his shoulder, carried himself like just the king shit, and it didn't live up to it. It didn't match what he was projecting.
But he was king of tattletales, though, too.
Yeah, it was all about that.
Iago.
Yes.
Yeah,
Monique, wasn't that Casey Armstrong's exact take on Jason that Chad just said?
That his
verbatim
his job was to talk to you just so that he could get something on you, so that he can reveal it to Howard on air. So that
he's trying to backstab to work his way up too. His job is to just eliminate everything because he wants Gary's job inevitably.
But he did literally fall backwards. Like he just and now he's just like this skinny, ugly guy. So he just it's just kind of ridiculous.
That rare breed of a guy who looks better fat, which is tough to pull off.
I'll give him credit for it. I just saw that very recently, that he lost all the weight, but he was just a big fat asshole. And Will was the opposite. Will was really nice. And Will was not like he wasn't giving you a lot, but he was just, it was passable that you were able to work with him. And I think that's who Brandano ended up interning for directly was Will.
Good. And that's why he became such a normal.
Right. And Steve was a great guy. Steve was one of my favorite people that I worked with there. So all the stuff that he's been able to accomplish over the years, I've been very happy for him because he worked his ass off too. Whereas I wanted out, he wanted in. And
yes, my love.
Sorry, on Back Office Radio, they go into him. He's so spot on. It's interesting because he's so out of the loop with current matter day. On Back Office Radio, Brandano would be pulled in there, and he would go into his background with Will exactly as he's describing. And it's fascinating because I didn't know that history. And with the wrap-up show, he pitched it first, and Brandano took it from him.
Right. I love what Beth's principal says. I put it up here saying Jason was the guy who pushed and pushed and pushed until you almost punched him in the face for pure catharsis, regardless of losing your job. I could absolutely see that as being, I could see Jason being like the most reviled person on that fucking staff for sure. For sure. And I meant to say that he failed upwards is what I meant to say, because who would hire a Jason?
Well, he also does the classic thing on the wall, make Howard happy. So he's mastered the art of taking everybody down to make Howard happy at all costs. That's almost like a game.
Yes.
He was there doing everything.
Yeah. So you rarely hear him on the air either.
That's true. And that's a good thing. Yeah. So you listened to the show till maybe pre-COVID. So you listened to people like Chris Trainer. What's his name?
Mike Trainer.
Mike Trainer, Chris Walding, and other people who really are just doing things for the sake of appeasing their boss, who I swear to God has such bizarre gay tendencies now that the show is kind of nauseating. So what's your feeling on this?
Yeah, I've gone in and out over the years,
I love the way I try to swing a fucking question in. I don't even understand myself sometimes.
And then you're softballing by saying kind of nauseating. Yeah.
It's very
sometimes it's great. It's never great. Kind of nauseating.
There was a time after I left in February 2006, I did not listen for many years. But then I picked it up around like the Charlie Sheen stuff, right? When that was happening.
Right.
It was can't miss radio. So I then picked it up for a certain amount of time. And then I stepped away again. And then I came back like 2015. listened to it for a little while, didn't really dig it, stepped away. Listened pre-COVID, the show started turning really gay, like
Really
out of
gay.
nowhere. Really gay. And I was like, this show's not for me. not that there's anything wrong with that, but it was
No, but do you think it's because a lot of the female persons who work behind the scenes, they first off, they don't get any kind of airtime whatsoever, and I feel like it has always been a very male dominated type of show. But do you think it's because their fear of like a sexual harassment lawsuit or something going on?
I don't know. I think it's changed the identity. Everybody evolves over time. You know, you change
Into what?
I don't know.
The trucker going across country wants to hear 3 hours of fucking cum hat?
Is
really?
Chris is he the gay guy?
Yes. Horrible.
The first time they had him on and they're like, tell us about, you were with this guy last night. He's like, yeah, it was fucking this guy and he was this and that. And I'm like, what am I listening to?
He's like, who is this show for? That's what they're on, right? Like, who is this for?
And I'm not, I didn't like, I never went to the shows because it was tits and ass and it was lesbians and it was the Sibian, like, the same thing with Opie and Anthony. I liked the show because they were funny. They told good stories. They had relatable guests. They had good news stories. That's why I like the shows. I like the little side characters, the whack pack, great, funny, whatever. But I was never drawn in for the boobs. They were great add-on, I'm not going to say it was like something I turned away from, but I'm not there for the dick, I'm not there for the
you
gay
can get
part.
porn on your own. You don't need that.
It went super gay. I mean, there's no other way to say it.
It is super gay. And so when you look at Howard in person, because I've seen him, is that you calling me?
Yeah, I would say I just want to Pumpkin and let's talk about Marcy. Yeah, Marcy and Steve Brandano. That's after that. That's like they had their tryst. I think it was 14. So Back Office Radio ended, and it kind of comes. I'm the one who stumbled on.
Marcy wasn't there yet at this.
Marcy wasn't there yet. She started not with Steve anyway. That was much later. That was not much later, but a couple of years later. And then, right. So George Takei, I say this all the time. He's the first voice you hear on Sirius, and that gave them a conduit to go gay all the time. And when he had George in, it was all about George and fucking Brad's sex life the entire time.
So vile, honestly, so fucking vile. Like I always think of George as being like the most vile, predatory gay man. Seriously, I just think of him as
he is, and he gets this kind of gay uncle pass for some reason. And I was so happy when he had that Me Too, which it stuck around.
Totally.
I hated him more and more.
Yes, I agree. And you look at what a gangly, anorexic freak he actually really is in person. Do you think? I mean, do you think he looks sickly? Like, do you think when you look at him that he doesn't look like a well man?
Yeah, now absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. I mean, he was always very skinny, very gangly, and had that bird kind of look to him,
like Marfan's disease.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it.
Yeah,
but I think he's very sickly looking, and it's been that way for the last couple of years. And you see he's slowing down, and it's okay because he's 70 years old.
It's
but
okay.
You see the clips like the Bruce interview that was his last big media frenzy that was around him. It's just slow.
Yeah. Yes. There's no energy. There's no passion. Right.
And it's mixed with the the look, and it doesn't match who.
Yes, love.
I think it was K-Tate in one of the chats. He described Howard as sterilized with nothing to offer anybody but himself. Is the personality he gives out like a sterilized, restrained? We make fun of the 12-second pauses all the time. He's going into that right now. You think they're going to, but did something happen to him? No, he's pausing for 12 seconds, reading a monitor, and he called them, sterilized. He's got nothing to offer anyone but himself, and that's to the tune of $4,000 a minute, which is insane.
I'm sorry. I'm reading chat here. Beth's principal is saying, Moni, give us a gift for New Year and share what you know about Beth. Perhaps having gone on a date with Donald Trump, please. I've heard it. I believe it. Do you know anything about it? I don't think that that's true because Donald Trump always had higher standards than a Beth. And, Donald, as we all know, and I've told this story many, many times, he would get all of the books from all of the modeling agencies, Ford and Elite and Casablancas and all of them. And he would just go through the book, and he would, put a little sticky next to the person that he wanted one of his assistants to get a hold of for him and see if they would go out with him. And Beth never made it to that level. Beth was a fucking fit model. She never did runway. She did, the models in these books were gorgeous, and she was never part of that world. Never, ever, 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 ever. So yeah, no. Trump, she was way down the model totem pole for Trump. Way down.
Monique, was Trump part of that circuit we talk about with the Mercer Kitchen and Soho Grand Hotel and that whole scene?
Trump has never seen he doesn't drink, he doesn't smoke.
No,
he's not that guy. And he when he picked Marla, it was so funny. I remember, I can remember where I was, but we were looking through, I guess Marla Maples was with Elite maybe at the time. And we were looking through the book, and this girl, Susan, who did PR for the company I was working for, looks at the picture of her, and she's like, oh, she's dating Donald Trump right now. And I'm like, isn't he married? She's like, irrelevant. This is the one that he picked just recently, as a matter of fact, I heard. And so they had just started dating at the time, and he basically picked her out of a fucking book.
That's exactly what AJ Benza described it.
Dating isn't really the word I would use, because everybody knew that if you were dating Trump, you were just the arm candy that you just kind of. And she just happened to get pregnant. I mean, I would love to do what we're doing right now with a review of the AJ Benza interview we had done that time, because there's so many amazing tidbits of story in there about how she was already pregnant. They had to get married, and and that whole thing. And she was fucking her driver, her bodyguard.
You didn't hear who the real father was, Monique?
Huh?
You didn't hear who the real father was?
No.
It was Borgata.
Who's that?
Yeah, I'm just kidding. That's the casino that killed him in Atlantic City.
Yeah, but there was so many great stories like that. But yeah, no, Beth was never in those rankings.
We're listening to anymore, and
so true.
It's okay, it's all right to age, but I think the show would be a lot more interesting if he started to talk about getting older and started to talk about this isn't even 10.
Let's hear about your mansion in Palm Beach. Let's hear. He has kind of like, I love calling it the Robert Smith disease. He just can't get over looking like that kind of rock star thing that he perceives in his mind, almost like Gene Simmons did for like the longest time. Like, you just can't get over that jet black hair.
Right.
But it's like, you're aging, you're getting older. You need to get over this. And he wants to be known as an interviewer now. He doesn't want to be known for the tits and ass. And I think that's why they've kind of gone away from that.
But that's fine. But then just come out and start the show one day and say, listen, the Howard Stern show and what you knew of it doesn't exist anymore.
Exactly.
This is the evolution of my career. I now want to focus on being the celebrity interviewer of all interviews. I get the biggest stars. I have the highest profile. That's the show. If you don't like it, SiriusXM has not many choices, but find somebody, that's what he's got to do.
What do you think the future is of a SiriusXM if he leaves in 2 years? 3 years. I mean, do you think that I can't even imagine anybody needs it anymore? I got to be honest with you. It sucks.
Well, Chad, what's the rule in show business that Howard's torn limb from limb? You get no one to get off the stage, right? And he can't part with the fame that comes with it. But he's so insulated from criticism because of the way he has this set up. Right. And it's the Marcy Turk thing. By the way, did you ever see the Pelican Brief?
Was that the symposium that he had?
Yes.
The meeting, yeah. And
yes, I did. Okay. I was sent that at one point, and I wasn't surprised. I mean, again, it's kind of how it was without the guidance of what's happening now. Like, they were always very professional behind the scenes. You didn't see it. Right. So with the Marcy,
every person we meet now, we talk about, let's watch the Pelican Brief with them. We should have another one with Chad, just as an excuse to watch the Pelican Brief again. I forgot. I meant to call him. Can we consider you a friend of the court? When he got off, and I couldn't get it out. I wrote it down. I couldn't get it out.
Of course we can.
Yeah,
They
yeah.
all are. The enemy of our enemy is our friend. I mean, that's just the way it works for us. You know how it works. Wait, so Chaka Khan, Beth was represented by what? Big Star Models Agency? Wait, is that actually a joke? Is that actually a real agency? I'm just curious.
Stuff. I think that's what he always wanted and wanted to be perceived as, is this more organized conglomeration. So when I saw it, it was weird, but it wasn't for me because I kind of
Makes sense that
understood.
he tried to do this because he couldn't be the bad guy. He couldn't tell people, don't dress like a fucking slob. Don't be wearing your Adidas tracksuit to work every single day.
But that was me. That was me, Monique.
You were allowed to be.
That's his audience.
I didn't want to be. No, I didn't want to look like a slob. I never came in a t-shirt and like sweatpants or Adidas pants and sneakers. I always had a button-down shirt or like, a hat, like a 3/4 zipper with, pop collar or something. I always wore the backwards hat. That's like my thing.
But it's always perception. It's perception. And
that's it.
Yeah. And what about somebody like Benji? Because he's such a weirdo to me.
Weird guy. Yeah. I had very minimal interaction.
Weird guy.
After I left, I saw him like a year or so later at one of the Exotica conventions in Jersey in like Edison. And I went out to him, I was like, hey man, I used to work at the show, and like just stared at me like I was like drooling, like,
snot was coming.
Green goop coming out of my eyeballs and ears. And I was like, okay, like I'm just gonna slowly step backwards and walk away.
Chad, was he there for an appearance or did you just coincidentally run into him?
I don't think he was there for an appearance. I think he was just there. I think he was just kind of floating around.
Even more bizarre.
Weird. You think about it, and you think about most of these people that are on that show in particular, I think, because I've met a bunch of them, and you feel like they save absolutely every part of their personality for the show. Like everything that they are is there. Yeah. And so when that's gone and when that's taken away, they have nothing else to give. Does that make sense?
It does.
Yes, it does.
That's exactly, that's basically the feeling I've had ever since. Is I was there from, saw everything going on from July 05 to February 06, but you carry it forever because it's so branded into your brain, everything that happens there, that it's hard not to,
I get that. And then so let's talk about your last days with them and how it was working for Laura, because we didn't really get into that.
Yeah, it just was brutal. She's just tyrannical, she was just hard to deal with. I didn't like the way she talked to me. I didn't like the job as it was laid out, after I accepted it, and I walked away from the full-time salaried position because it just wasn't worth it to be berated and be treated like a second-class citizen, and and then have to then be in charge of then the people who were in my position a little bit earlier. Like I didn't want to delegate all those shit.
It's really interesting. Chaka Khan said earlier that she was working as a personal assistant for somebody, and when it came time for her to do a job that she actually would pay somebody else to do, then she knew it was time to leave. And that's what I'm kind of getting from him as well. It's like, he had this job where he was, putting together all the Howard mentions and all this shit. And he was working in the back office. But then to get a raise or to get an increase in salary and for your job to be so incredibly demeaning, it's like, what the fuck's the point of it?
It's a skill in life someone built to know when to hit the ejector seat to get out of. You have some radar where you go, this is not going anywhere.
It's not.
I can't do anything with this. It's a skill to identify that, so you're not just beaten down. I have no options. There's usually people who have no options that put up with that.
Yeah, I mean, like they were saying, they were like 30-year-olds working for free for the show just so that they had it on their resume, which I find fascinating. All right, here we go.
Things to other people, and it wasn't for me. It was not why I wanted to continue working for them, and I probably should have tried to move to Sirius at some point, but I never did, and I left, and that was the end of it. I went to work for WWE.
Which was fine. I mean, so in your world, that's a great move, and it worked out for you.
It worked out a little bit because WWE was, not a glamorous job either, and I didn't stay there that long only because it was like I said this, I think, on the Husey show. I said, never seek out your dream job because it could be a nightmare, and that's exactly what it was. It was just It was not what I expected it to be. I had to wear a suit all the time, and it was just
Monique.
it sucked. But you know, it was a crash course in learning the ropes of entertainment.
Yes, darling.
We never really officially got to what did he actually really want to do with the WWE, because he never really specified exactly what he was going for there. This weird jobs. Remember the comedian Patrice O'Neill?
Yeah.
He was a script writer for them.
For the WWE.
Yeah, while he was a comedian. So I wonder what he was trying. We never really got like what he was trying to do. Exactly.
Not sure. Not
Promoter.
sure. I don't. Well, go PM him. See if.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to.
No pun intended with wrestling, but you know, learning the ropes and not really being fulfilled in what you expected. And I'm not going to sit there and take it. I'm going to look for the next opportunity.
Absolutely.
And it led me to working for NBC for a decade. So
and also knowing what you don't want, like what you don't want your job to be.
That's exactly right.
I don't
you
know
know what's curious about Laura, Monique? And
Yeah.
Obviously.
Oh, that's not you.
No, it's not. You think like you're an assistant for all those years. You'd think you would change it. You would relate to him, and you would kind of correct the shit she had gone through to be nicer to him.
It's like hazing in fucking frat house. You know what? It's like, fuck you. I went through all this shit. I had to deal with all of this at one point, and now you're gonna have to.
But does that get better work out of him? He left. If it was more pleasant,
terrible.
maybe.
Yeah, I'm sure it is a rotating door. I mean, I wonder how long that other, guy worked as the assistant to the assistant too before he left.
Yeah, I think maybe like he was probably there like a year or two. I mean, I remember like I wanted out of there so bad that I had like a toothache, and I was
couldn't get out fast enough, right?
I have to go. I was like, I have a toothache, and I have to go to the dentist and leave. And it was like an hour into being there because I was like, I can't do this. I just can't be around this. Not to be like a snowflake, but like toxic work environment.
Toxic, of course it is.
But it's what was bred. It was how it was. You were always supposed to be on pins and needles. You were always supposed to be ready to be shit on. And I just didn't want that.
Means that. And so it always makes you wonder how these people have lasted for as long as they have there. I mean, it's like a very incestuous kind of clique that they have there that I can't imagine somebody new coming into. I mean, I can't imagine that anybody new is going to come into that as it is. But can you imagine, though, that a show like his, where he's working 3 hours a day, 3 days a week, 95 shows a year, that he still needs a staff of 70 people? 70.
No, I can't believe that. I can't believe it at all, because back at least, 2005, 2006, the transition was you needed 70 people because there was so many moving parts. But when he joined Sirius, everyone knew he was going to have a lighter schedule, but there was just more to the machine going on. He was still semi-active in creating more stuff outside of the show. There was all the rumors there would be a script coming in for him for this, or he would be working on production.
None of that ever happened.
Yeah, never comes to
long
fruition.
gone.
Nothing.
No,
but it never even came to fruition. He did one movie. He co-produced one show.
But it was always out there still. It was still lingering. He would be attached to stuff, and it necessitated having a larger staff. But now, I mean, it's like,
today. What do you think? I mean, it's kind of like the Pentagon. It's like, I think he has this budget, and then if he doesn't fucking use it, then there's a potential that he could lose it.
Yes.
So they spend as much as they can on the stupidest things. They do these set decorations now. They did a Game of Thrones throne made of fucking black penises. I mean, they just do like these ridiculous things that nobody wants, and it's become like this morning zoo, weirdly enough. Well, and because he doesn't share any of his life anymore, it's become hacky, like a hacky morning zoo with some interviews thrown in.
Yeah, we always say, Chad, that the only way to make this current show interesting is if he just embraced the 1%er life and just told us and just ran it up the flagpole. Right?
That's it. That it would have worked from the second he got over there, or the second that Marcy Turk started and changed the culture of the show. It would have been a huge, I'm sure the fans would have accepted it by now. There would have been a different turn where it's not going to be so many, anti.
You're right, Hooper. Tax write-offs for the company. Absolutely.
You always got to think of that.
Absolutely.
Stern brigades out there. It would have been a little bit more embracing of it, because how can any logical listener of years and decades get behind what they're producing now? It's listenable.
That's great.
And what I love about Howard's like anti-podcast rhetoric that he had for so long is that podcasts have blown by what he's producing on a daily basis.
Absolutely.
And when it first started and Sirius was supposed to be Howard 100, Howard 101, the classics, and the new stuff. Give me 2 stations of the classics.
Yes.
Because it's not worth it. They could keep the Howard Stern library on Sirius and probably do better numbers than what they do now.
Absolutely.
Because nobody wants to hear it.
Because you know what's crazy though too, if you listen to any of the Sternthology, it only goes back to Sirius days. Like they hardly ever
He's
go
trying
back.
to whitewash his past, Monique. So what in this Me Too movement is
And
never going to play.
He eliminates Artie from a lot of stuff. He eliminates pretty much anybody who's no longer with the show. And if you're no longer with the show, you're not part of it anymore. You're not part of the world. You know, Stuttering John had that stupid lawsuit, and so now he for sure will never be heard on air again.
It's crazy. I remember probably right before I was offered the full-time position, they had given me some sort of, paperwork to sign to, not disparage, Howard while I worked there, like your typical NDA. And I remember I never signed it. I never sent it back. I was trying to look before I came on for my little box that I have of all my Stern mementos, which is my broken iPod Nano that I got for Christmas that year. It was broken, never worked. The Christmas card that we got from Stern, Howard, and Beth, and my NDA, and a couple other little mementos I saved. And I tried to first jump to Opie and Anthony. I was like, I emailed Opie and Anthony, was like, hey, I work for Howard. I got this NDA. I really don't want to sign it. I would love to come work for you guys. Is there anything out there? And they never got back to me.
Wow, that's a great attempt, though. Let me ask you about them, because you're a fan of theirs, and I vividly remember the whole Emily Stern Kabbalah Madonna nude play. So you must have been in this like crazy conflicted position. Howard was going crazy over that. He had that whole place shut down.
Yeah.
I don't know how privy you were to the insider stuff with that.
I think that was after I was gone. I remember loving every second of it, when Opie and Anthony were doing it. But Opie and Anthony had come back to XM in 04. And DirecTV was simulcasting just the audio portion of the show, obviously,
And
I was listening to it on the, in the morning before I was getting ready and going to Stern. I'd be like, oh my God, I want to be there. I don't want to be here. This is fucking terrible. I hate this shit. And how Opie and Anthony, like.
Oh, Monique. Guys, can you hear me? Did Monique drop out? Good God! If that's true,
totally dropped out.
Okay, I was about
that
to go
was
into
so
a whole.
weird. I'm like
That was
looking
bizarre.
around, and I realized that I actually stopped the
Well, you interrupted me asking Beth's principal about John Candelaria's candy cane in the late 70s, early 80s Pirates. Seeing Willie Stargell naked in the shower.
I saw that.
We are family indeed, Beth's principal.
It's now the arm show, so you can actually
No, I'm just kidding.
You can take us right into New Year's with the arm show if you want to. No, that was really weird. It just kind of started circling, and it just went away. I guess they just want Chad to now be done. So let's just finish off.
As a Howard fan, Chad, when you heard about the gag order that Mel Karma instituted on them, that must have made you just like, what? This is free speech guy telling me?
Yeah, it was so weird. Where they did the whatever you said, the serious whatever the blah blah blah, whatever they would say about serious. And Opie and Anthony used to do radio edit when they would talk about Howard because of the gag order, and it was genius. That was great.
Amazing. And what did you watch which we love to this day, the video that Opie had done with the lockdown about the Howard protocol?
Yes.
No, that was that at K-Rock as well. I mean,
sort of. I mean, it never really changed. That was the Opie video was. I mean, that was the greatest look to show everybody. Absolutely. Like, look, the fans aren't crazy. This is what this guy's doing to the people in the building. You always had to clear the hallway when Howard was coming. That wasn't new.
Yep. Bob Levy said that, Monique. People had to dive into cubicles when Howard walked back to the. There's always an Howard in elevators, right? Whether it's Chad or the freight elevator at Sirius.
Yeah, the freight elevator at K-Rock too.
Oh, I didn't know he used
Could
them
you
there
look
too.
him in the eye? Were you able to? Were you under
I mean,
strict
he's a
rules?
little tall. I'm not the tallest guy in the world
Yeah.
myself, so couldn't really get the eye
Were you under
contact.
strict rules though to not like approach
Don't
him?
remember. It was just don't bother him. Don't get in his way. There was a weekly staff meeting in
the Starling.
Sorry. Remember the Spencer Coburn clip we played about him getting the call from the woman who was in the elevator with Howard and saw the netting and the scalp? That's exactly what he's described. I think that was all shut down. I'm guessing because of that, because of the Coburn story we heard.
I agree. 100%.
In the studio where everybody would kind of sit around and pitch ideas. And that's where I first realized he does nothing. He just takes in the content from the producers and anybody else contributing.
That's what I was actually wrote that down. How much preparation at home does he actually do for the show? He claims he's never stops thinking about it and
handed the piece of paper as he's walking in,
and
and that's really it. They would throw stuff around at these pitch meetings. I remember, and I'm not taking credit for this. Okay, I swear to God, so nobody can hold this against me. I remember talking about an intern show while I was on K-Rock, and they were saying, we need ideas for shows for Sirius. And I remember talking among the group and saying, how great would it be if there was an intern show and the interns could say what they see behind the scenes and blah, blah, blah.
Such a good show.
I believe Brandano's the one that pitched it.
Exactly.
And
yes, babe.
We should have a round table with him, with Chad, Steve Brandano, and Steve Grillo, because they all claim they created the intern show. Remember Grillo told us that? I forget when we got off. I remembered Grillo told us that too.
You know what? I could understand that everybody, all things can be true at the same time, to be honest with you. If you're an intern,
parallel thinking, great minds.
You can have the thought that maybe an intern show would be something good to do. I mean, he was there at a time where it was probably more important, but yes, you're right.
He did host it Wednesday at 7 o'clock.
No, I was gone, but I'm not taking credit for it. I just remember saying it. And you would have these meetings where things would get pitched and it would either make it to air or guests would be pitched. One of the things I always found very hypocritical at the time was when, you'd get, hey, you'd pick up the phone, hello, and you'd be like, hey, this is, Mike Smith from Artist Entertainment, and we'd like to have so-and-so come on to promote blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
and I remember one of them being Triple H, the wrestler. But this is in 2005. And I wrote it down, and I said to Gary, I said, hey, so-and-so's on the phone. They want to bring Triple H to the show to promote something. It was like I don't know if it was a book or something like that. Gary turns to me and goes, we are above having wrestlers on this show. And, they had on Vince, they had on John Cena, they had on big names, but Triple H at that point was not the mega, icon that he is now. So they were like, we don't have wrestlers on the show.
Monique.
And then I watch as they can't get any guests. And
yes, love.
Sorry, it's a good clip. We never played it on our show, and we'll get to it sometime. You know who Dana White is, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So Howard blew him off quite a few times, and he went nuts on him on Opie and Anthony, and says exactly what Chad's saying. This kind of weird, out of touch arrogance they have with the guest bookings. They have no idea who's, it's the show is for Howard, and he has no clue what people want, and it's all for him. I remember the early days of Sirius, how bad those guests was. It was like Bloodhound Gang, Bob Levy, Greg
all
Fitzsimmons.
Of them on the same day too.
Yeah, on the same break, and they turned down like George Carlin, and like wrestling was huge in those years. Whether you like it or not, whether you think it's irrelevant fluff and fake, whatever you think, wrestling was massive in the years he's talking about.
So why do you think nobody, that's the whole reason he had people like the Black Keys or Skrillex or any of these stupid people that you think, why in God's name is he having them on? Because people from the back office are like, oh my God, you have to, he's like the biggest thing in blah, blah, blah. And this one's the biggest thing. I still to this day believe that Gary insisted on Skrillex coming in because his son was in the
absolutely bingo.
And
yes,
he was trying to do a little bit of Gary pro quo for sure. But, insisting that was like the hottest thing and he needs to have him on.
I got to give Brandano credit with that whole Black Keys thing, because he went into Howard. He's like, he's like, I don't understand how you book this show. I don't understand what this guest protocol. I don't understand what you like. Tell me why. And they would, Brandon was holding his own there. And I remember hearing the wrap-up show, and he would often reveal guests they turned down on the wrap-up show. It would infuriate me.
Yeah,
And
and
it
look,
infuriated
it's
him.
such a good story, Jack White, and he was, wasn't really going to be a guitarist, and he meets this chick, and they wind up dating, and they get married, and she's like, "Well, I'll play the drums if you want to play the guitar." Never played a drum in her life, and they wind up with like a recording contract, and become huge, and it's such a great story that how could you not want to? And if they want to come in, how could you not want to have them in?
I can't think of a better way to alienate people in show business and have them just turn on you and just hate your guts. As soon as that arrogance spills out, and the way, especially the way Gary acts, like everyone's beneath them.
Yes, of course.
It's just a great way to make enemies.
Yeah. All right, let's finish this. Let's wrap up his
They have wrestlers coming in
Yes.
left and right. I'm like, what hypocritical shit this is.
Do you think
not only that, Chad,
actually,
they had
go ahead.
Brooke Hogan on. They had Brooke, not just
Brooke Hogan,
they had
exactly.
Brooke Hogan on. That's
But do you
serious.
think that Gary actually did that job? I mean, really is the one who gets all these guests in? I mean, they were lauding him like crazy about the Bruce thing. And it's like, okay, it's been 20 years.
Yeah.
since
They
they've been putting him in.
call. I mean, I don't know if they still do it that way, or now it's probably all email related, but you would get, hey, this is, blah, blah, blah. And I'd like to bring in, whoever to promote this movie coming out on July 20th. It's like,
And
oh,
he
okay.
doesn't do any of that. He doesn't. It's so weird. I feel like he has the same like 20, 30 people on. Like, yes, babe.
Sorry, and you're in the middle of
That's
something
it, sorry,
great there.
sorry.
You're absolutely right. B40 writes here. It's pretty brilliant. It's like Howard traded in Mark McGrath for Adam Levine.
Yes.
That's exactly what he did. And I remember when he had Dave Matthews. We covered it. He had Dave Matthews on once. And Dave Matthews is huge, 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 huge. Whether you like him or not, he's a massive kind of like, Grateful Dead
following, like a Grateful Dead following,
And
exactly.
he finally had him on, and he acted like he'd always wanted to have him. And it's that phony baloney thing. And I remember him turning down Dave Matthews a number of times, hearing Brandano say it on the Intern show.
Yes. Yeah, Joan Rivers is still being booked.
I know that was the big one
Why
back
she
then.
never
The Joan
appears.
Rivers joke.
Exactly.
Howie Mandel, Joan Rivers, Nick
in
Cannon,
rotation.
of course.
Yep.
Easy.
It's just
Easy lifting.
changed so much.
Yep.
It's
Yeah,
just a horrible show.
It's an interesting, like, again, it's a short amount of time if you really think about it, but there was so much that happened, and I digested so much of it because I just, as a fan, was like, I can't believe I'm here, but then I can't believe it sucks. And I can't believe like I have to do this grunt shit. I actually like just taking in the mail and putting it in the computer and going home with oodles
Really
of
happy.
prizes. Christmas that year, everybody got this amazing haul from me because it was like audio books and CDs and DVDs and magazines and signed things.
It's a beautiful thing.
Great.
Chad, tell us about the pitch meetings a little more. It's Tuesday, right? They do this, and they all gather.
I believe it was Thursday at 11:30.
Okay.
To that's my recollection.
I'm sure you had a ton. What are some ideas that
I
never
just
came to
remember
fruition
sitting there.
yourself?
I don't remember specifics. I just remember sitting there. That's all I remember.
And they would shoot
And
it
it
around
was-
the room, and people would pitch stuff to Howard.
They would just be sitting. Hey, what do you think of blah blah blah? Well, maybe put that in the maybe column.
Right.
But it's everybody, just sitting there. I can't remember. I don't remember seeing Robin, but
It's so weird that they always say
Artie.
that Benji never participates in those things. It's so weird to me that Benji is actually still on the show. It's so weird to me that Benji is actually integral to the show in any way, shape, or form. I'm just kind of blown away by why we think Benji is still a part
There's
of
a lot of theories. You could trace it back to he's the worst years of the Stern Show are Benji is the head writer. So what do you say about that, right? That's
I
who's
don't know.
writing his dialogue.
It was a lot of Will and Jason. It was a lot of Richard and Sal.
Hey, shut up, Scout Finch. So we just thought he had like a little bit of interesting behind the
I think this is great. I
certain
disagree,
kind of
Scout Finch.
information. And you know what? You'll look back at this interview and you'll say, "Oh yeah, he had some really good information to give
Throwing
us."
stuff out there.
Not anymore. I mean, it's just it just makes me wonder, especially with the hours he works now. It's like, what the fuck do Richard and Sal do all
What do
day?
they do? Yeah, what do they do at this point? And that's what I don't understand is how they're operational as a 70 plus people organization when what are they doing?
What do you do all day?
Are Richard and Sal just programming the channels now? Like, what are they doing?
We had a friend who sent me an email saying, "Oh my God, the funniest thing! I was listening to my local radio and I just heard Richard call in on Tradio. This was just like 2 months ago, and it's like, are you kidding me that they're still trying to do like Tradio kind of?"
Prank calls are illegal, Monique. You have to call the person first and tell them you're calling them. So
It
it's so
depends on
antiquated.
we talk about this all the time, John. It depends on the state. If it's a one-party state,
We
you're
do
allowed
have
to
this
do
conversation I have
all
Gary
the
on
time.
here admitting that. I got to show you these clips.
Oh, let's talk about that really quickly before we let you wrap up. Phone calls into the show, are they all real?
To the best of my recollection, at the time, they were all real.
Really? Because the guys on our
2005, I believe they were real.
Electric Eel.
No, but I mean, besides that, where it's like something stupid and fake. And did people call in just because they knew what Howard wanted to talk about? Like, did you kind of pull people based on what they wanted to talk about so that Howard had a script of it?
That I'm not 100% sure of. I think that they would maybe get a little direction, excuse me, from the call screener, whoever it was, or whomever associate producer was hanging around. But again, I would leave. I wouldn't be in there during the meat part of the show. I actually was able to even get there while the show was on. I didn't get there at 5 o'clock in the morning and warm the bagels up for everybody. I would get there like 7:30, maybe 8 o'clock. Right. And I'd be able to, because I was working in the office. I didn't need to be in the war room. So maybe they did, but I would be under the impression that they would, trust me, there were calls coming in before the show started. I mean, the people were calling in, but you know how it is. They pick one random person out of thin air. And I think that they might've been a little more guided than
I would think so.
Yeah, then they were just naturally calling in.
Agreed, Chaka.
All right, Chad, this was super interesting to talk about with you.
Oh, thank you.
So glad
appreciate that.
you wanted to. Well, you know why? Because it's the minutia. It's those little stupid things that always entertain us, because he's so fucking boring to talk about. I mean, it's a struggle sometimes to do this show 3 days a week. I have to be honest with you. Actually, I think we've done more hours of podcasting this year than he
probably.
has.
Yeah,
and
you probably
right
have.
about the podcast thing. It's like so funny to me when we first started podcasting. This was like 7 years ago. I mean, people would be like, "What's a podcast?" And that the entire spectrum of what podcasting has changed, and every show is still our first. Just so you know, we've gotten no more advanced in our ability to do
and that's the charm of it all. Yes, Chaka, he's way too normal for that show, and that's why he's left. Let me tell you a little something about Benji. This one, you get back to him. I'm sure we'll get to it someday if we do a Benji show. There was, the gaggle of times he's late shtick, right? This is like the third time, and he's getting a grilling, and I believe he's on the wrap-up show. And callers have just had it at this point. They're going, "Please explain to me, guys, what does Benji do? I want you to name one thing he writes that makes me laugh." He bombs on roast, as they acknowledge it, the Andy Dick thing. I think it was Blanco. What does he do? Please spell it out for me. Prove us wrong. What does he do? Tell us why he's funny. Give me one fucking thing he's done. Right. And they couldn't do it. They couldn't come. They go, "Well, he's just a really important guy. He's just really important." Because I mean, I don't think they wanted to admit that he writes general dialogue for him, just general sterilized dialogue. Which we had the pictures of the papers that were written out. I think Benjamin caught that at that point.
Right? Yes. All right, let's finish with Chad. Let's just finish with this. So much, and a lot of Sirius's actual financial well-being is from buying that podcast group that they bought. So the fact that Howard thinks that you have to still, pull up your bootstraps and be on radio in some small station somewhere in order to get your legs is such bullshit now.
I thought that for a very long time. I really thought that was how you had to get through, and I would reach out to different radio personalities and say, like, what's the route? How do you go down the radio path? What's the best way to do it? And everybody would say, go find a small market in Idaho or Kansas City or something like that. Go to Colorado and get in. And that's how you'll work your way back to the top. But I was like, I'm in New Jersey. New York is where the radio capital of the world. Yes. There's got to be something there. And it's fine. I just found a rejection letter I got from CBS AM 770 or 80, whichever one it is. and it was dated like 2004. Like I was always trying to get in somehow. I just managed to get in through the biggest show in the universe.
It's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. So let's talk to everybody about Chad. And so if you want, you can follow Chad on Twitter. What are you, Chaddy and B?
It's Chad ENB, ChadIanB. If you haven't known by now, Chad is not the legit name. Chad's the radio name. So
yes,
Chad
yes.
ENB.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so IBE exclusives. So what do you do? Signings? I mean,
IB Exclusives is my sports memorabilia and entertainment company. I help put together meet and greet opportunities with celebrities, entertainers, wrestlers, and sports stars, as well as host them for private signings where folks can send in their items to be signed by them directly. So they send it to me, I get it signed by the athlete, and I send it back. And
okay, awesome. So is that a decent business for you? Is that something that you?
Yeah, it exploded after COVID. Something happened with the people in my generation where they decided they wanted to relive their youth and they wanted to get immersed in collecting. And if it's a trading card, if it's an autograph, it's something that's vintage, it sells, and people have tons of it that they want to get signed. So it seemingly never stops. It's a 24-hour business, and I've almost made it my full-time job because
amazing.
Yeah.
Okay, but you still do a podcast, okay? And you do that podcast with Francine,
Correct.
who is at ECW Diva Francine. The name of the show that you guys do, which I love the name of, is called Eyes Up Here with
That's great.
Francine.
That's a great name.
Can you guess why?
Yes, believe me, we know. And so how'd you get to know her? Like, how are you with her?
So I started around 2015. I, wanted to utilize my contact list and skills I had in the wrestling world. So I got together with a good friend of mine, and we started a small wrestling podcast network that evolved rather quickly because our claim was that we had the last interview of the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, before he passed away.
Oh, wow.
And we're talking like the day before he passed away. Right? So within 5 months of doing a podcast, we had sold the episode to the WWE to put in their archive, and it just changed our profile. And I did for the better part of about 5 years exclusively wrestling interview podcasts. But when starting up the signing side of my business, got connected to a lot of the wrestlers because they like to get out there and meet the fans. And
of course,
I got connected to Francine through my other podcast cohort, the franchise Shane Douglas. And Francine and I hit it off. We have a great rapport. We have a very funny show that we like to call it a lifestyle show because she's a mom, as well as a cane swinging valet to the extreme. And the show can be about everything. It could be about wrestling. It could be about life. It could be about anything going on in the world. And we've just had a great relationship for the last, I'd say, 4 years plus doing this show.
Awesome. Okay, so Eyes Up Here with Francine. It's available pretty much on any of I pulled it up on Spreaker, but it's available pretty much anywhere that you can grab.
Yeah, you can get it on Apple, you get it on Spotify, you can get it the network is the Creative Control Network, so they help put the podcast out on all the apps. There's one other show I wanted to mention that I did not send you. It's called Get My Go. It's a show I do with Husey every so often. We have a great little group of guys that we basically do the WATP model, but this is a show that's evolved big time, and I think it's very much under the radar from a comedy perspective. So it's Get My Go on YouTube.
So is it Get My Go as the podcast?
That's it. Yep, right there. Get My Go. It's in audio form, but it's mostly a video show. 4 to 5 guys, maybe 3 to 4 sometimes on a panel, and it's just riffing on bad wrestling podcasts. And we did end up crossing over into the Dabbleverse for one episode.
Your reaction is so great there.
Jesus
one of the biggest videos I have on Francine's channel is talking to Husey about Stuttering John. So
are you kidding? Can I just tell you, it's just I did this interview with him before everything like the shit started hitting the fan about him, and yeah, it wound up being one of those things that has more views than I can possibly imagine. And they constantly go back to it in the Dabbleverse to pull different things from. And you know what I have, John? I just want to tell you as a sidebar. I was sent the show I did with him where we went over his wedding.
Oh God! Finally, how long did that take?
Have
2
it.
years?
I remember hearing, I think maybe before you had him on, and I discovered your show. I remember, you talking about John prior to him coming on, but I guess it was the lead up to when he eventually came on. And I heard the first time you had him on when it, originally happened. So
because he was one of those guys where he wanted you to go on his show, but he never wanted to reciprocate by you having him coming on your show. Just didn't want to do that. And he would call me like super last minute all the time and say, hey, can you come on for, beer on the balcony or whatever? I'm like, when? He's like in 15 minutes. I'm like, oh, fuck, dude. It's like, are you kidding me? I was like, but you owe me at this point. Like you owe me a reciprocal kind of thing. And he's the only one out of everybody that I know from past Stern Show who's like that, but whatever. As soon as I got in league with Carl, it was all over. So, then the battle began, but whatever.
Incredible rise and fall from the fall, because he is like the most polarizing topic and it gets views. That's the reason why Get My Go did it. It was just an easy layup of views. But Get My Go on YouTube, funny show. It started ripping on just this bad wrestling podcast, and we did something like 50 episodes on this one show and just beat them into submission, and it was fucking hilarious the whole time.
Don't you love that? I know. I'm getting so bored of talking about Howard that we really need something else, and I just definitely don't want it to be
the Deppening.
Exactly. John does a show called The Deppening. It's completely about Johnny Depp, which I can't even imagine people listen to, but they do, and it's just kind of insane to me. But okay, it's a niche for everyone, right?
Hey, Chad, I have a good title for you. The book you hopefully write. I was a Lackner lackey.
Yeah, I was a Lackner flackner. I got out of there before I could get any kind of flack.
How old is Laura Lackney? I'm just curious.
100? I don't know. She was old as shit. 2005. She has to be hitting 70 herself.
Yeah.
Was she like a married woman, or did she just dedicate her life to Howard?
No, I believe she was single.
No,
How could she be married?
She's a cat lady. Yeah, that's what she is. All right, Chad, thank you so much for being with us and participating in our silliness. I'm going to stay on with John for a few minutes longer and listen to some other Laura Lackner clips that we have that are kind of stupid.
Oh, well, I'm out of here then. So I don't have any additional Laura Lackner or anything. I appreciate you wanting me to come on. I hope I didn't bore anybody for the last hour and 39 minutes, but
we'll hear it when the chat comes on. So, yeah.
Anytime you need me, give me a holler.
All right. Thank you, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
Bye. Okay, so that was fun.
The only thing I regret not at.
Okay, so that was our show. We did a little Laura Lackner clips, but I'm actually tired of myself at this moment. So I'm just
I don't want to crowbar Depp in here again, Monique. I know you didn't listen to the audio. He and Amber Heard recorded themselves for their therapist. At one point during the Depp. Amber Heard's going through something. Depp screams at her. He goes, "You make me sick of myself," and it's just echoing through Penthouse 3, and that's so reminiscent of that. I couldn't relate more to what he said there.
Jesus Christ! All right, so we're gonna have to play it out because this is the show. Although I'll probably just pop this up. I'll probably just pop this up as its own show because I'm dying to play us out for New Year's since it's already 10:46. And
in the chat, they described Laura as a 5 towns sea hag yenta along the way. That's so brilliant. 5 towns
hag. That's who she is. For all of you listening, we will pop this show up as its own entity, sans what I'm gonna play for you guys right now, because let me just pull it up because this is a great way to end the stupidity of
Happy Dustin Gwen New Year to you too, Choco Khan. Happy Vietnamese New Year to you.
All right, hold on. So let me just download this Mr. Whiskers You'll Never Walk Alone thing. So we did this about 5 years ago, and we thought it was really stupid and funny at the time. and it was a way to generate doing donations for the show, and we put
Yeah,
it up.
before you do, Monique, I just want to say to everybody in the chat, thank you for all your great comments. Again, everybody's so brilliant in there.
Oh,
It
you made me
makes
laugh
you
so hard.
cackle the whole time. But please tell Chad how much you enjoyed him on here on Twitter, and then you can browbeat him for questions you might have. But I thought he was really good, and I
thought
think
he
he
was really good
deserves your
too.
praise.
Yeah,
And I think
agreed.
Yep.
Agreed. All right, so we're going to wish you guys a happy new year and have a wonderful rest of your night. I am going to play for all of you, the classic You'll Never Walk Alone, as done by the infamous Mr. Whiskers. It was one of the stupidest things we've ever done, and I found it all of a sudden one day and downloaded it. Thank God, because it's just it's really the stupidity of all stupidity. So let me play. We're gonna play this out with this.
It's been a day. It's been a good day. A good day, that kind. A second, as it went down, as coordination may be. My God, what a good day. What that kind.
Thank you, G Canada.
When you walk through a storm, keep your head up high. And don't be afraid of the dark. At the end of the storm, there's a golden sky and a sweet silver star. Walk on through the wind. Walk on through the rain. All your dreams be touched and blown. Walk on, we hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone. Walk on, with hope in your heart, and you'll never walk alone. You'll never walk alone.